like to request once again to all the back participants to come in front rows and make it a session very interactive and very vibrant. So now would like to uh, start our today's session. So it is my proud privilege to introduce and invite our chairman sir first for chairman address for our today's session. CA Murtuza Kachwala sir, a very vibrant year we have seen this year. Very active, vibrant, virtual, hybrid, and a physical event as well. Today also we have in the morning a physical event, full day on labor laws, and now on GST. Again, we have two faculties today. So would like to request CA Murtuza Kachwala, Chairman sir, to address the gathering. So before Chairman sir address, would like to request all to stand up for the ICI motto song.
Yeshasupteshu jagrati. Yeshasupteshu jagrati. Kamam 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 kamamsho. Pursho nirvimana nirvimana. Tadeva shukram tadeva shukrada brahma tada brahma. Tadeva mritamudeva mritamudjane. Tasmin lokaha Sarvetatunam Syadvikrasjananyati Krasjan. Etadvaita, 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 etadvaita.
Thank you all. And now would like to request Chairman sir to address.
Thank you, Virag. Good evening to all. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. So let me welcome you all again to this program today on GST. And really, both the topics are very, very interesting. At the outset, let me first thank my dear friend, CA Gopal Kedia. Gopal bhai, thank you for accepting our invitation and joining us here today and deciding to share your knowledge on how to handle the GST audit. And also, you're going to cover practical tips on litigations. I know both the topics are huge, vast. It is not possible or practical to cover in 1.5 hours, but I'm sure he's going to pick up some interesting things which will be helpful to all of us. Let me also thank the second speaker in absentia. He will be joining us soon, Aumkar Gadgil, who is going to cover on input tax credit. And let me also thank CA Virag Shah. Virag, thank you for all the work which you do, all the support to WIRC. Thank you. And let me thank CA Bhushan Ramni and CA Ashish Mishra for your support. Thank you. GST was supposed to be an easy act. I don't know how easy it is. Lot of changes, lot of difficulties, and I'm sure lot of interpretation issues and lots of litigation already has started and lot more to come. And if there is litigation, if there is confusion, which means there is opportunity for us, provided we charge right type of fees to the client. Otherwise, नहीं तो फिर मेहनत भी करेंगे और पैसा भी नहीं मिलेगा, right? So that is one. But last About 10 days back, we had a 2 days national conference on GST, and where we had various speakers, and many of them, but especially one speaker I remember on classification. And that itself, only that area I thought was so much, where like how to classify, under which rate, what category, that itself by giving opinions or helping the clients, you can make a lot of money types. So there is so much which is there in GST as well. But now post-COVID, I think everything is possible sitting anywhere in the world. And for us at the right time, at least the Middle East countries have also started adopting VAT in various forms. And in Middle East, people never handle tax, so they do not know. People who've been there for ages. And hence, almost all finance organizations are hiring people from India as well. But then there is a lot more consultancy work, and there also litigation will start. The countries who adopted VAT early, litigations will start there as well. And there are a lot of people who have started work. And again, for all our benefit possibly, the corporate tax is coming in UAE now, and I'm sure it is going to follow in other countries as well. And the moment corporate tax, if an organization UAE has got a subsidiary in Dubai, or like in a subsidiary in Kuwait or a Saudi, then again, what price they are selling, whether it is high or low, whether it should maintain transfer pricing, is it related party, is it arm's length? So again, transfer pricing and all of those will start. And there are enough and more opportunities where we can deliver work sitting out of here as well. So I'm saying in taxation itself, there is so much more. Yesterday, we had a virtual session on NRI taxation, and we had 1,000 participants attending that. And there was a speaker, CA Pooja Teli from Pune, and she sits here and she does a lot of work for NRIs. So we're not talking only about the big four or the large firms on the top. There are these individual chartered accountants also do the work. There's a guy called Anand Govande in Pune who files returns for US HNIs as per US Income Tax Act sitting here in Pune. And he's got 200 people team, and I'm given to understand, like earns around $40 per hour average revenue for all the resources. So I think the opportunities are massive. We need to keep looking at and then do like practice in the area where we can get enough for our time's value or worth. So with that, let me stop here. Again, welcome each and every one of you, and happy learning to all of you. Thank you. Over to you, Virat.
Thank you, Chairman Sir, for the wonderful opportunity providing for learning and upgrading knowledge and skill. And now it's my proud privilege to introduce our friend CA Gopal Kedia ji. He is a practicing chartered accountant having more than 14 plus years of experience in the area of indirect taxes. His area of expertise prior to introduction of GST covered central excise, service tax, state VAT, and FTP. Working on various indirect tax related matters, including compliance, business structuring, advisory, and system implementation. He is also handling litigation and representing clients before various authorities. His other activity is delivering a knowledge sharing session, has addressed more than 200 plus session on GST on different forums regional council, branches, CPU study circle, Chamber of Tax Consultant, Regional Training Institute of CAG, offices of SERA, Central Excise Revenue Audit, CAG Studies Group, CREDI, MCHI, Thane, Trade Manufacturing Association, CII, and many others. He is also a member of Indirect Tax Committee of WRC for last three years. He is a national faculty for GST program conducted by Indirect Tax Committee of ICI. He is a deputy convener of Indirect Tax Study Circle in the past, convener of Indirect Tax Committee of Kalyan branch of WRC of ICI, co-opted member of CSR committee, and he's also writing various article in journal and also writing a blog. So with this brief introduction, we welcome you, sir, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Would like to Chairman sir to present a memento on behalf of WRC.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chirag Bhai, Murtuza Bhai, for providing me an opportunity. So friends, today we are here at the end of the at the end of the calendar year, when we are having holidays amongst the deadline of filing GSTR 99C. What is the reason? To complete our CPRs. So we understand the value of compliances. Therefore, we are here. So we also understand that the cost of the non-compliance, in case the compliance is not done, then it leads to litigation. If the litigation comes, we do not have any option then to handle it. And that is what today's our topic is, handling the litigation in GST. So friends, while we are in our journey of professionalism, we many times heard a phrase while handling the litigation that not knowing the law is not an excuse under the law. So here my version of this phrase is, it is settled principle even accepted by the Supreme Courts as well, that unawareness of the law is not an excuse under the law. My version of this is unawareness of the right given under the law is detrimental to the benefit provided under the law. So that is what today's target, to understand the privilege or right given under the GST law for safeguarding the interest of our client. See, GST and any act, any taxation act is complex structure which is very difficult to understand, and it is applicable to all the stakeholders. It's not just the taxpayer. It is for the consultant who find difficult to understand the nitty-gritties of the law, as well as for the department administrative authority to find the right way in which the law has been drafted. So here the supremacies of the law, rest all the stakeholders are within the law. So generally the litigation starts with the so the intention of the litigation, so whenever any litigation begins with, comes within a presumption that the lacuna in following the procedure has been identified, which has been well researched, well thought of, and once it is established, then a process of litigation has started to let the other party to accept it. That is what the basic understanding, how it should have been started. Meaning thereby that once the notice is being served by the department, then it is an underlying assumption that department has gone through all the facts, whatever the information available with him. So I'm speaking about the litigations, not about the inquiries and the notices. We are come with a stage ahead of the notices inquiry. We are talking about the litigation. So litigation, when a notice or SCN is coming, it is an underlying assumption that department has done all the research work. They have identified the issues, and they are issuing the notices to let the other party convinced to accept the mistake or otherwise express their view. However, sometime we found that it is not followed in the way it was expected. The notices are served in a vague and with the intention to identify the fact and expecting the taxpayer to give them the ingredient to initiate the litigations. Like in many of us has received, our client has received the notice from the department, which is based on the presumption that there is a difference between the turnover reported in 26 AS and ST3 returns. So what is this? There is no application of mind. It is just a two figure. There could be many reasons for such differences. So while deducting the TDS, it has been deducted on the tax component. It has been deducted on the exempted supplies. It had been deducted on the reimbursement of charges. Sometimes it has not been deducted. So there are many possibilities. Some has complied, some has not complied the TDS provisions. So many possibilities are there, but ignoring all these possibilities, mere for the difference is appearing, the notice is being served, and it is asked from the taxpayer to explain the differences. So this is not what they expected. This is not the due process which has been followed. When the law is established with the decency or with the discipline which is expected from both the side. It is not just expected from the taxpayer's perspective, it is also expected from the department side that they follow the law in which it is drafted. So when assessee or the taxpayer is expected to make a compliance in a particular way, file the returns, do their compliances in a prescribed manner, similarly, the department is also expected to initiate any procedure in the way it is envisaged under the law. That is what called as due process. If the due process is not followed, likewise, it is imposed on the taxpayer. If the prescribed compliances are not being done, it is at fault. Similarly, if the due process is not followed by the taxpayer, by the tax administrator, then it is a fault at their part, and the entire proceeding can be set aside. So, and today, like as the Murtuja Bhai has conveyed at the beginning, that this is very vast topic, litigations, which is very difficult to cover in a timeline of 1.5 hours. So basically, I am choosing only the microscopic analysis of section 73 and 74 SCN, which is a major cause of the litigation. Maximum of the time the litigation goes around these two, around the phenomena of the show cause notices. And show cause notice is the one which set the law in motion. So there are around 10 situations in which the show cause notice is issued under the GST law. One is the denial of the option to pay tax under a composition scheme. The notice should be served in GST CMP 05. So these are the mandatory form in which the notice is served. If the notice is not served in this form, then it is a not compliance and can be equated with the non-following of the due procedure. If there is an absence of following the due procedure, the demand can be fettled. So it is very, very much important that notice should be served in the manner in which it is provided under the law. So whenever any notice is received, it is very important for us to understand whether it is served in the desired form or not. If it is not served in the desired form, then notice is liable to be quashed at the very beginning. Cancellation of regular registration, REG 17, rejection of application for revocation of cancellation of registration, REG 23, cancellation of provisional registration, REG 27, and so on, and show cause notice under 73, 74, and 76. I was using the term due process. So friends, let me introduce you to the due process as far as the process of show cause notices are concerned. So how, as far as section 73 and 74 are concerned, so what is the meaning of due process for the section 73 and 74? So at the outset, there must be first observation of any demand. It cannot be like in vague, as I explained earlier. So there should be a concrete ground before the officer to initiate a show cause notice. Issue DRC 01 to allow pre-show cause consultation. So any obvious error which is apparent from the record, say for example, the RCM liability has been declared, the input tax credit input tax credit, while examining the GSTR 9, the GSTR input tax credit against the RCM is appearing as 1 lakh rupees, whereas the payment of RCM liability is appearing as 50,000. So this is a mistake which is apparent from the record. So for this thing, many taxpayers would adopt that they do not want to continue with the litigation. They want to pay it off without to continue with the litigation. So for handling such kind of situation, to avoid the wastage of time of the tax administrator and the all the stakeholders, there is a concept of pre-show cause consultation. So here it is expected we'll deal this issue in subsequent slide. So I'm just touching upon to understand the whole scheme of the due process. it is expected that they issue a DRC 01 at the beginning, so that if a taxpayer is admitting the liability, he can discharge it there though only and avoid the entire litigation. If tax, in case taxpayer opt not to continue with the litigation, then he has its own privilege that he do not accept the pre-show cause consultation. After this stage is crossed, then the SCN shall be issued, and it is mandatory under the law. The show cause notice per se is not sufficient to comply with the process of to comply with the due process. It is provided under the law that show cause notice should be served along with summary thereof in form GSTR DRC 01. So if any ingredient is missing, it is a violation of the due process. Taxpayer is allowed to file his submission within a period of 30 days. However, no express time period is provided. Sometime passionate officer has made an attempt to pass the order within a period of 7 days or so. We'll look into some case law related to this. Entertain taxpayer reply by way of objection. So it is the duty of the officer that they accept the reply furnished by the taxpayer, grant opportunity of personal hearing, and then pass the adjudication or speaking order with DRC 07. Speaking order, I'll come this aspect like those who has experience of dealing with the VAT authority, the state authority, and simultaneously having the experience to handle with the central department. So they have figured out this difference, the speaking order thing. So this is what the entire process from the beginning, how it should have been started, how it should have been concluded. All the steps in this process should be followed. If one of the step is missing, then it is a missing of the due process. Show cause notice. So these are the trigger points. Determination of tax not paid, short paid, erroneously refunded input tax credit, wrongly availed or utilized, other than. So there are two sections basically dealing with the show cause notice, section 73 and 74. The main difference between these two sections is the reason for initiating the demand. So 73 is a reason other than fraud, willful misstatement, suppression of fact, whereas the section 74 is having the key ingredient of the fraud, willful misstatement, and suppression of the fact to evade the tax. This is very, very critical to understand, because if we understand, see what happens, now we are experiencing that everything is moving toward automation. It is not like the pre-GST era where the manual works are involved, and we most of the time involved in the compiling the information, furnishing the information, reconciliation, all these activities has become automated now. So, and there is a transparency, and there is a ongoing reconciliation is carried out on month basis. And the department is having more information now than they used to have the previous regime. And the information which is available with the department is more structured in a way that there are requirement of furnishing the many information like the invoice number, HSN code, description of the product, state. So all this data bank is available with the department. So having this, all the data with the department, it become very essential that now the demand, the open assessment kind of thing will be limited, and there would be targeted demand which would be initiated. So sometime it would become very difficult to fight the case on merit and get the success in the case. In that case, the typical approach of the chartered accountant generally, whenever the show cause notice is come and they try to make attempt to read it out, so their first attention is go toward the merit of the cases. What is about the data, correctness of the insurance. This is because how we evolved ourselves from the very beginning to true and fair view of the data. Whereas the lawyer community is altogether having a different mindset. They do not generally indulge into this matching the data, finding the truth. They are trying to find out the loopholes into the order. So these minute aspects, whenever it is difficult to fight the case on merit, help us to safeguard the interest of the client. So 74, the ingredient of the 74 is the fraud, any willful misstatement, suppression of the fact to evade the tax. So here these terms are very important to understand what is the meaning of each aspect. So whenever it is a fraud, so it is completed by comma, which means it is completed in its own. So once the fraud is established, there is no other requirement to substantiate the demand. However, if we see the subsequent phrase, it starts with or any willful misstatement or suppression of fact to evade the tax. So here two terms, willful misstatement or suppression. These two terms are preceded by the words willful and succeeded by the term to evade the tax. So mere misstatement, mere suppression doesn't lead to invoke the provision of 74 unless it is preceded by the term willfulness or to evade the tax. So there should be an intention. Mens rea should be established to invoke the jurisdiction of the 74. So let me, before we dwell into this technical term, let me aware you the relevance of 74, and the major difference is about two things. One is the higher penalty. 74 is having the higher penalty in comparison to the 73. Second major difference is the extended period of limitation. In case of broadly 73 is having the 3-year period, whereas 74 is having the 5-year period. We will discuss in detail the timeline for both the sections. So therefore, if we establish that our case is not fit for the 74, it is case for the 73, and the notice is issued at the 5th year, the entire notice can be held invalid. So therefore, it is pertinent to understand, it is important to understand these terms. And further, the important point to note here that the show cause notice can be issued here for only for the 4 reasons. Whenever the law is constructed, it has to be understood strictly. It should not go beyond what is mentioned under the law. So here only the 4 scenario has been provided when the jurisdiction of 73 and 74 can be invoked, which these are when the person has not paid any tax, there is absence of output tax liability, short paid, erroneous refund, erroneous received the refund, or wrongly availed or utilized input tax credit. These are the only 4 scenarios which has been envisaged under these 2 sections. Now coming to the next discussion, suppression of fact. Suppression of fact has been defined. The term suppression has been provided under section 74, explanation 2, which says the term suppression means non-declaration of facts or information which a taxable person is required to declare in his return, statement, report, or any other document furnished under this act or rule made thereunder. So now, so Gujarat High Court in case of Apex Electronics has ruled out, has mentioned that information which is not required to be provided under the law is not a suppression of fact. First, it should be established that this particular information is required to be furnished. Something which is not required to be furnished is not suppression. For example, I am a service provider, has supplied a service and collect X amount from the recipient toward the expense incurred as a reimbursement through accounting debit note in the capacity of pure agent. Now, such kind of information is nowhere required to be reported in any return statement, reports, or any other documents furnished. So if there is absence of furnishing this information, this cannot become a cause for attracting the jurisdiction of 74. Similarly, Supreme Court in case of Cosmic Dye Chemical has mentioned that so far as the misstatement and suppression of facts are concerned, they are clearly qualifying the word willfulness, preceded by the words misstatement or suppression of facts, which means with the intention of evasion of the duty. So there should cannot only be suppression or misstatement. It should be with a intention of evasion of the tax. Both should go along. Independently, it won't serve the purpose. It is therefore not correct to say that there can be suppression of misstatement, which is not willful. Misstatement and suppression must be willful. To understand it, see, in case of a public sector undertaking, where some amount is skipped to be declared and it result into the non-payment of tax. So here, the charge of the willful and with the intention cannot be implied, because ultimately the whatever the saving in term of evasion of tax will go into the consolidated fund. So the person handling the compliances does not having the intention to evasion of the tax. So in such case, the jurisdiction of 74 cannot be attracted, because there is an absence of willfulness. Yes, there is a presence of the misstatement or suppression. It is possible, but it is without the willfulness or with the intention to evade the tax. So it cannot be attracted. Supreme Court further held in case of sample drugs and liminents, something positive is required before it settled with any liability other than mere inaction. Willfulness or suppression, contravention of any provision of this act is a question of fact depending on the fact and circumstances of each particular case. So we just took an example of pure agent. So take that example in a way that I had recovered amount from the recipient as a pure agent within the invoice. In previous example, the amount were recovered through a separate accounting debit note. Here it is recovered through the same invoice. In the same invoice, there is a value component of the taxable value, exempted value, and the value of reimbursement of expense in the capacity of pure agent. So if we look into the scheme of the GSTR1, there are two columns, value of the invoice and value of the taxable component. So value of invoice is required to put the value of the entire invoice. If that is missing, then it can lead to suppression. If that being the case, then here the second question comes into the picture is to establish the willfulness and the intention of the tax. Now, during the course of audit or investigation, it is found that it was skipped to be reported, while filing GST1, which is otherwise required to be furnished, but tax on the legitimate component has been paid, and the pure agent, the deduction taken toward the pure agent is fulfilling all the condition which is required for the purpose of pure agent, and that has been established during the investigation stage. So it will lead to a connotation that there was no willfulness to evade the tax, because it was legitimate, right? But it was skipped to be reported. So extended period cannot be invoked. Something like the action should lead toward the reduction in liability. Mere inaction of something doesn't mean a suppression. Sometime in case of Supreme Court, in case of Tamil Nadu Housing Board has held that it is not mere failure to pay duty, it must be something more. That is, the assessee must be aware that the duty was leviable and it must deliberately avoid paying it. The word evade in the context means defeating the provision of law for paying the duty. Say, for example, a person has acted to not pay the duty based on the opinion of certain some experts of the industry, some expert of the subject. So here it is difficult to establish there he is having the intention to evade the tax, because his act was dependent on the opinion of some expert. So there was a missing of willfulness. He was in bona fide belief that whatever he is doing, he is within the purview of the law. There was no intention to evasion of the tax. So this would help to avoid the charge under the section 74. So friends, quoting all this judgment is very relevant to understand, because what happens whenever it's a matter of fact or matter of interpretation in a particular notice. If sometime we found that we are very strong on the merit of the cases, which is apparent from the record, so inclusion of all these points become skip to mention in the notice. Whereas if that turn out to be that our positiveness about the merit of the case turn out to be otherwise at subsequent level, at adjudication level, then for subsequent appellate proceeding, it would be very difficult to bring the new ground into the case. So therefore, even though if we are strong at the merit, mention of all these points is very essential, or it would be very strong objective to start while responding to any notice. Wrongly claiming any benefit does not amount to suppression, misdeclaration with the intent to evasion of the tax. Next is time limit to issue the show cause notice. So there are two sections, 73 and 74. Separate time limit has been provided for both the section. So like under the GST, it is very welcoming that instead of casting responsibility or instead of giving right to the administrator, it is now the law has been drafted in such a way that instead of providing liberty to the administrator, the duty is casted on them by way of providing limitation for passing the order. It cannot be the time limit for passing the order is not open now in GST regime. So as such, there is no express provision under the law for issuing the show cause notice, the time limit within which the show cause notice can be issued. Rather, an attempt has been made to casting a responsibility on the administration to pass the order within the given time frame. So which is very welcoming aspect. So 73 says, 7310, the adjudication order need to be passed within 3 years from the due date of furnishing annual return for the financial year to which it's relate. And 73.2 says it is prescribed that the show cause notice shall be issued at least 3 months before the due date of passing the adjudication order. So conjoint reading of these two sections says that the time limit for issuing the show cause notice is 2 years, 9 months, within which it should have been issued. And this time limit should be begin from the due date of furnishing annual return. So for these 3 financial years, 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, the due date for filing the annual return for 17, 18 was 7th February 2022, extended time limit. So whenever the fraternity is demanding for the extension for GSTR 99C, they should also keep in mind that it is also increasing the time limit for issuing the show cause notice. So therefore, it should be very careful while we are demanding for the extension. So for 17-18, considering the due date of filing AR, the due date for issuing the show cause notice was 6 November 2022, which has been passed now. And order for the 17-18 should be passed by 6 February 23. Post that, it would be conclusive. I'll deal it in the subsequent slide. It would be considered as deemed concluded. 18-19, 30th September 2020 was the due date. Accordingly, 29th June 23 is the due date for issuing the show cause notice, and 29th September is the due date for issuing the order. Similarly, time limit for show cause notice under 74 is 5 years. Actually, it is not for issuing the show cause notice. It is for the purpose of issuing the order, which is 5 years. And show cause notice should be issued prior to 6 months of issuing the order. So effectively, the time period available for issuing the show cause notice is 4 years, 6 months. So 17-18, now the due date under 73 has already gone. So definitely there would be an attempt to cover the case in the jurisdiction of 74 by making the allegation of fraud, willful misstatement, and suppression of fact. because 73 cannot be attracted now as far as the financial year 17-18 is concerned. Due date. Due date. Yes, here if you see the verbatim of the law 7410, adjudication on need to be passed within 5 years from the due date of furnishing annual return for the financial year. See, what would happen if, say, due date is 30th December, 31st December. So possibilities is return is actually filed either prior to this date or post this date. Okay. So in case if it is filed before the due date, then it would be very difficult for the administration to track these due dates, and they will miss the opportunity of extended time period. So it has been kept at the due date. So law is clear. Otherwise, wherever you will find the intention is the manner you are explaining, it is worded in that way. Here it is the due date of furnishing annual return. So they are mean to it. And this is very much welcoming aspect. Deemed conclusion of the adjudication 75 subsection 10, which say the adjudication proceeding shall deem to be concluded if the order is not within 3 years as provided under section so and so. So if the order is not passed within the provided time limit, so sometimes they are intentionally kept to hold the order for any vested interest. So now it won't be possible for them. They have to pass the order within the permissible time limit. Otherwise, it shall deem to be concluded, and the benefit of doubt or the non-compliance, non-following the due process is the mistake from the department side. So the benefit will be granted to the taxpayer. Pardon? See, it is so the due. So 74 is envisaging 4 scenarios. So non-payment of tax, erroneous availment of input tax credit, and the erroneous refund. So in case of refund, it is linked with the granting of the refund. It is for the purpose of that refund only. For remaining aspect, annual returns shall be considered. It would be assumed that show cause notice issued is not in a is issued not in a valid one. See, here it is termed that the show cause notice shall be issued at least 6 months before the due date of passing the adjudication. If it is order is not passed within the permissible time limit, the yes. And sometimes it is also possible that show cause notice is covering up is covering the couple of years together, say 3 years together. So it is and a single show cause notice has been served for all the 3 years together. So each year should be considered for the purpose of this time limit. It is possible that 2 years are exclusion and 1 year only is coming within the permissible time limit. So it can be held before the authority that the demand pertains to this particular period is not sustainable under the law. Only the demand which is falling within this permissible time period is can be sustained. And similar view has been obtained in case of Messer Squires Chemical held by the Supreme Court. So here the show cause notice was served for the period January 1986 to May 1907, which is held to be beyond the extended period of limitation, so which was not sustained, and only the period of 2 months, May 87 to July 87 is concerned, will be considered, has been considered. Time limit for remand back matters. So here under the GST law, it is again very welcoming provision wherein the provision for remanding back of the case has been set aside. There is no provision. So unlike in previous tax regime wherein we find a tendency whenever the adjudicating authority has skipped to appreciate the fact of the case, they do not appreciate, and they may make the order ex parte and without considering the fact, the commission and the matter goes to the appellate authority, then appellate authority tend to remand back the case again back to the adjudicating authority, which is actually not cooperating with the taxpayer or the authorized person. So we want that it has to be heard before the concerned authority only, not by should be remanded back. So here it says where section 107 subsection 11, the appellate authority shall pass such order as it thinks fit and proper, just and proper, confirming, annulling the order appeal against, but shall not refer the case back to the adjudicating authority that passed the said order. However, there is a proviso in this section which says where the appellate authority's opinion that any tax has not been paid, short paid, erroneously refunded, or where the input tax credit has been wrongly claimed and utilized, no order requiring the appellant to pay such tax unless appellate is given a show cause notice. So in case during the appellate proceeding, if the appellate authority has found that there is a non-payment of the tax, any liability emerged which has not been covered through the show cause notice. So they preserve the right to communicate to their adjudicating authority to initiate the proceeding again afresh, issuing a fresh show cause notice, and it should be start from the beginning. The demand and any new demand cannot be bring during the stage of appellate authority when it was not covered into the original show cause notice. And time limit for now, let's say the original SCN is issued at the end of the maximum time period available for issuing the show cause notice, and thereafter matter went before the appellate authority. So obviously in 6th year, 7th year or so. So if any demand is observed at that point of time, noticed by the appellate authority, and they wish that it should be adjudicated from the beginning, then show cause notice under 73 or 74 is required to be issued. But again, it is capped, it is barred with the time limitation. So at the end of the 8th year, 9th year, it would be barred by the time limit available in the 73 and 74. In that case, how it would happen? So it is again a question in the law which has not been explicitly provided. So my view is that when the law is constructed in such a way that otherwise it will become never ended. The limitation will lose its essence. So it should be stick to the original timeline which has been provided under 73, 74. Exclusion for the calculation of the limitation. So where the service of notice or issuance of order is stayed by an order of court or appellate tribunal, the period of such stay shall be excluded while computing the period prescribed under 73 and 74. Subsequent period SCN. So see what happens when a show cause notice is served and departments comes to a conclusion that there is evasion of tax, or there is a practice which is losing the revenue, or there is a wrong claim of the exemption, or there is a wrong claim of input tax credit. if they found such fact for a particular financial year, then there is a primarily assumption that the same practice has been followed in the subsequent year as well. So say notices are for 17-18 and the dealer has availed certain exemption erroneously, then there is a presumption that the same mistake has been continued in subsequent year as well. So here there is a no requirement for initiating the entire proceeding from the beginning, because from the administrative perspective, the issuance of show cause notice under subsection 1 of 73 and 74, it has to be started from it has to be followed the entire procedure. Like the adjudicating authority doesn't have sometimes doesn't have any power to initiate the adjudication at his own. It has to be tested through their system. It has to be passed through the procedure what has been laid down. So there is a tax research unit. Those are processing the data, and based on certain data, they are issuing the notice. And the adjudicating authority is expected to follow the show cause notice, which has the data which has been given by the administrative department. In such a case, during the adjudication process, it has been noticed that this mistake has happened for the subsequent year as well. 18, 19, 19, 20, then they need not to go back again to follow the entire administrative process again. They have liberty to issue a statement under section 73, subsection 3 or 74, where applicable, for such period other than those covered in the original show cause notice. So service of statement under subsection 3 shall deem to be a service of notice under the subsection 1 of 73. Corrigendum to SCN. So corrigendum is general term which are generally issued for any obvious error. Say while quoting the turnover, it has been erroneously reported, which is apparent from the record, and there is a difference. So to rectify that obvious error, there is a provision of issuing a corrigendum. Okay, so suppose books of accounts is appearing turnover of 1 crore rupees and notice is coming with a turnover of 100 crore rupees. So which is a apparent mistake from the notice. So that kind of mistakes can be rectified by way of issuing a corrigendum. However, there is no provision under the GST Act which are providing this process to issue a corrigendum, but it, as a matter of practice, it has been adopted and corrigendum is being issued. But there are certain guidelines for issuing the such corrigendum, that it should be for the obvious mistake. It cannot be for enlarging the scope and making a new case altogether through by way of a corrigendum. So, the Delhi Tribunal in case of ESIP Industries Chemical has held that the revised notice for enlarging the scope of first notice by taking the advantage of defense already disclosed would be illegal, and bar and analogous would be clearly applicable in the fact of the cases. So quite possible that during the process of adjudication, the new fact has been emerged before the adjudicating authority, and they find out that this is the point which they have skipped while issuing the original show cause notice, and there is a substantial demand on the new findings. So for catering those new findings, the help of the corrigendum cannot be taken. Corrigendum after personal hearing cannot be upheld. Order passed cannot be approved. No show cause notice for the same subject matter. It is very interesting in case of Karnataka High Court in case of Associate Cement Companies Limited, wherein the refund application has been made before the authorities and refund has been sanctioned, and 2 show cause notice has been served on the company alleging the erroneous refund. Both the show cause notice has turned into the favor of assessee, and also they examine whether the doctrine of unjust enrichment is attracted in the claim of refund, and they satisfied it doesn't it matches the requirement. However, the sum officer in the department did not like the decision for whatsoever reason. We understand why. That cannot confer the jurisdiction to issue a third show cause notice. In our judgment, the issuance of the third show cause notice was without any jurisdiction, and exercising the power was totally unjust and enriched and improper. So for the same subject, say for financial year 17-18, there was an issue into the exemption, and that issue has been addressed. And subsequently, the incumbent had changed, and the new officer has identified that the previous order was erroneous. It is against the revenue. And then he cannot make an attempt to issue a fresh show cause notice catering the same issue, same exemption. So, which is denied under the law. It should not be. SCN on assumption and presumption. It is very much important, and it is applicable in all the cases. Friends, it is very important to understand, and while responding to any show cause notice, it has to be applied very carefully. We need to understand the case, and we need to make our submission in such a way that it covers within the purview of the assumption and presumption. See, at the beginning, we have understood that the adjudication process is expected to be initiated after a proper research, after carrying out the research analysis of the data, and once they should frame an opinion. It should not be initiated to bring out the facts or to understand the issue from the beginning. So having said so, in case of Supreme Court, in case of Garware Nylon Limited has held that the burden to prove is on the taxing authority to show that particular case or item in question is taxable in the manner claimed by them. So the burden of proof is on the department to prove that it is taxable. Mere assertion in the ground is no avail. It has held that this court that there should be material to enter the appropriate finding. Say, take an example. SCN has been issued denying the input tax credit availed on the motor vehicle, because the entry in 2A is having the because there is an appearance of HSN code of 87, and based on that chapter code, they frame an opinion that is ineligible without factoring the fact that this vehicle can be a vehicle for the goods, vehicle for the passenger, or whether having the seating capacity of 13 or more. So there is an assumption in the mind of the department that it necessarily a motor vehicle for the passenger, in respect of which the credit has been denied, whereas the fact can be different. So this is the case of pre-assumption, where the department has made their own assumption, and based on that they have issued the demand, which should be avoided, and such assumption is not liable to be sustained and can be coerced. Supreme Court in case of Oz Sugar Mill 1978, this matter has been time tested. Allegation is based on the calculation of raw material fed into the process and on working of the machinery as noticed during the testing inspection. So they have made an assumption that during the testing stage of the machinery, particular material has been fed and it provided a particular output. So that ratio they have applied for the whole financial year, and accordingly the demand has been raised, which is not the fact. Fact can be different. So this is a presumption, and which is not sustainable under the law. There are various other examples. Say for example, credit is not admissible on the ground there is a mismatch between the GSTR 2 and 3B. That again, this demand is very popular, which is again on the presumption that the mismatch of the data from the common portal necessary means that supplier has defaulted in making the payment of tax while making supply to the recipient. There are other instances wherein this can be a bona fide mistake, which is not necessarily means that the supplier has failed to make the payment of tax. It can be wrong reporting. It can be mapping under the wrong head. Instead of B2B, it has been mapped under the B2C. So there are possible scenarios. So mere it is not appearing into a cannot be a ground for confirming the demand. It has to be first established that tax has not actually been paid, then only the demand can be sustained. Taxpayer has received a show cause notice alleging that the RCM liability has not been discharged because there is a presence of RCM supplies in his GSTR 2A, because his corresponding vendor has, while furnishing his GSTR 1, has furnished a supply on which tax is payable under RCM basis by the supplier. So here there is an assumption, if the demand is raised on this ground, then there is a presumption that the taxability as assumed by the supplier is correct, and what is the understanding of the recipient is incorrect. So if I am of view as a recipient that this particular inward supply is not liable for RCM liability, so my view is incorrect, and underlying presumption is that view adopted by the supplier is correct. So demand in such case should be contested in this way, that this demand is based on the assumption. Again, the difference between the figure appearing in ST3 returns or Form 26 AS is the reason for raising the demand. There are simple n number of the show cause notice, like for every person this show cause notice has been served, wherein the difference between two figure is leading the demand. They calculate the difference, they calculate the tax, and the show cause notice is being served. Now what is this? This is a basic assumption that the differential tax differential turnover is compulsory liable for tax. There is a possibility that there is some certain exempted supply on which the tax has not been paid. There is a possibility that there is a reimbursement of charges on which the TDS has been deducted, on which tax is not payable. The tax has been TDS has been deducted on the service tax component. So that could be the reason for the differences. So all these are the assumption that tax is payable on those differences. So these kind of allegations should be contested with the presumption, and there are case laws available. In case of Gupta Power Infra Limited, it has been held that show cause notice has not placed any conclusive evidence in putting the fact. No relevance to this effect has been recorded in the finding of the original authority either. Original authority in its order has heavily depended on the notice to prove his claim for getting itself exempted from the payment of services. Now the onus has been transferred on the recipient or the taxpayer to prove that this turnover is not taxable. It is not the due process. It is expected that when the demand is initiated, it has to be tested. It is not it should not be vague on the basis of assumptions and presumption. Cross-examination, degree of reliability of the evidence in form of a statement by the adjudicating authority will be based on the examination when showed by the accused. So it is right provided under the statute that taxpayer, if any evidences has been supported by the adjudicating authority, whatever the demand has been raised by the adjudicating authority, and they are pushing some evidences in support of it, then those evidences, the taxpayer has right to cross-examine the evidences furnished by that authority. So like in case a statement recorded on oath by the third party witness under section 136. So it is right of the taxpayer that they can cross-examine to the witness whomsoever has given the statement under the oath. A statement recorded on oath by the third party expert, section 153 is providing power to the officer not below the rank of assistant commissioner to shout the opinion of expert on any matter. So if the demand has been raised based on the opinion of that expert, then it is taxpayer's right to cross-examine the statement provided by the expert. Assertion in notice as to ingredient to claim the demand, to sustain the demand. Credit report and other reports secured from the third party sources. Based on that, if that has been considered as evidence for raising the demand, so the right should be provided to cross-examine the evidences made. Supreme Court in case of Andaman Timber Industry has held that if such opportunity or such right is not provided, it is the violation of principle of natural justice and demand cannot be sustained. Show cause notice to legal hearer. It is the stage before the order. Show cause notice has been served and the adjudication process is ongoing. It doesn't attend the finality yet. So in case of Sabina Abraham, Supreme Court held that in the absence of machinery provision for proceeding against dead persons, legal hearer, duty and other sum do not become payable. Apply recoveries provision under section sub and so. Hence, adjudication proceeding under section so and so cannot continue against the legal representative. And similar view was held in case of Ajad Engineering. Recovery of service tax due of the proprietor firm cannot be recovered from the legal hearer of the proprietor after his death. Sir, the principles are common. So whenever the matter of fact is concerned, they may not be relevant. But when it's a matter of principle, that cannot be, the ratio can be borrowed from even actual tax regime. Wherever the possible attempt has been made to borrow the judgment from the present GST regime as well. So earlier, so as we discussed earlier, pre-show cause consultation. So it is very good thing which was existed in previous tax regime. Unfortunately, at the beginning of GST, it was not there in GST regime to provide such opportunity to avoid the litigation, providing the opportunity of pre-show cause consultation. So it was lately introduced by way of insertion of Rule 142(1)(a), wherein before initiating the show cause proceeding, a pre-show cause consultation opportunity should be provided by way of issuing a form GSTR 01A, sorry, DRC 01A. So DRC 01A basically pre-show cause consultation. So when it was introduced with the word shall, which was, so at the beginning, it was completely absent. When it was introduced with the word shall, which was subsequently replaced by the word may. So now it is at the mercy of the administrator whether to provide such opportunity or not. And it was a purposeful replacement of the term. So now it is, so in case if the opportunity is not compulsorily provided, it is at the discretion of the administrator to provide such opportunity. During the exigency of this provision, the word shall was available. This matter, the show cause, the demand and the show cause notice was set aside, taking the recourse of 142(1)(a), that the pre-show cause consultation was not provided. Opportunity of personal hearing. This is very important to understand, friends. This is stringent provision. The opportunity of hearing shall be granted where a request is received in writing from the person chargeable with the tax and penalty. So while drafting reply, the due care should have been taken that there should be mention of taking the opportunity of the personal hearing. If it is missed in the show cause notice, then it would be very difficult to call for the personal hearing. Subsection 5 of 75, the proper officer shall provide an opportunity of adjournment of hearing, and no such adjournment can be provided for more than 3 times. So in case of Bindal Sponge Limited, it was held that the adjournment should be a constructive adjournment. It should not be mere formalities. So like in one adjournment, the PH has been given, PH has been mentioned for the 3 dates, 10th, 15th and 20th. So whatever date convenient to you, you can come to attend. So here it cannot be said that the 3 adjournment had been given. It can be considered only 1 adjournment. Upload Textile Private Limited, given choice of 3 days of personal hearing in one letter would not amount to adjournment. Bindal may transfer of the adjudication officer. So when the hearing date has triggered, that time the officer was not available. He has been transferred. So that date cannot be considered. That cannot be considered as an adjournment, because adjournment should be from the taxpayer's perspective when he is not made available. When officer is not made available, cannot be considered as adjournment which is sought by the taxpayer. Now again, we are discussing the very important part of section 73 and 74, why we should try to make an attempt to shift the case from 74 to 73, because one reason the extended time limit, and second reason is the quantum of the penalty. So as far as the penalty quantum is concerned, there are 3 stages broadly which varies the quantum of the penalty. So voluntary payment before the issuance of show cause notice. So taxpayer has identified the non-payment of tax as his own, and he found that it is legitimate to pay, and he opt to pay for the same. He can pay the same by DRC 03. And in that case, if the matter is without willful state separation, if it is a matter of 73, then he can discharge the liability with tax and interest only without attraction of the penalty. Whereas in case of 74, penalty of 15% is required. He will make suo motu payment and intimate to the department. If department is accepting the demand, he will issue DRC 04 form if satisfied. Otherwise, show cause notice will serve. Now, once the show cause notice is served, another opportunity is provided. Now, the fact has been bringed out, emerged, and it is established on the paper. Again, the law is providing opportunity to settle the case without attracting the penalty. So it is advisable when after issuance of the show cause notice, if it is in the opinion that demand is sustainable, there is no cross argument, better to discharge the liability without the interest. If it is matter of 73, only interest and penalty, tax and interest is liable to paid, and 25% if it is a matter of 74. It would be paid through DRC 03. When authority satisfied with the reply, it will drop the proceeding by issue of form DRC 05. Payment made after 30 days of issuance of show cause notice, but again third opportunity has been granted, wherein the show cause notice itself is containing the due date by which the payment can be made with the lower quantum of the penalty. Then if it is a matter of 73, then interest tax plus 10% of the tax or 10,000, whichever is higher, and 50% in case if it is a matter of 74. Reply in this case is still must in the form DRC 06. And if the authority is satisfied with the reply, the matter will be closed with DRC 05. Some general provisions related to adjudication, that order issued by the authority should be a speaking order. We have seen in the, especially in VAT regime, that it's generally the state authority restrict them to make it as short as possible. The computation format is as long as 8 pages, whereas the final conclusion is within 2-3 paragraphs. We fail to understand what is the ground based on which our contention has been denied. So that is complete absence. Now, fortunately, under the GST provision, it has been made that if the speaking order is not passed, it would be considered as invalid order. 5 minutes. Okay. Order cannot travel beyond SCN. So as we discussed earlier, in case if during the course of adjudication any new facts emerge and the department in a view that there is additional demand which has not been covered into the SCN, then order cannot go beyond. And it is very much critical to understand from the tax consultant or from the taxpayer perspective that they read the SCN very carefully and they point out what are the issues covered into the SCN. So the order should be restrict to the point which has been there in the SCN. Any demand which is beyond or any issues which is not covered into the SCN should not be covered into the order. Say for example, the SCN has been issued about the inadmissibility of the input tax credit in respect to the section rule 4243, wherein proportionate input tax credit is required to be reversed. Now, while verifying the claim of such reversal, it has been emerged before the authority that there were certain input services on which RCM is required to be paid, but the taxpayer has not paid the tax on RCM on those input services, which is apparent, which is very obvious and covering from the documents produced before him. Now, they attempt to make an attempt to cover this aspect also while passing the order. So law is restricting them. 75 subsection 7 state the amount of tax, interest and penalty demanded in the order shall not be in excess of the amount specified in the notice. And no demand shall be confirmed on the ground other than the ground specified in the notice. It should be restricted to the notice. So now this is from SCN perspective. Now what is the course after issuance of the show cause notice? First and foremost ingredient is note the date of receipt. It should be mentioned through pen or pencil on the face of the show cause notice when it is received, because the due date, because the 30 days period will be counted from the date of receipt of the notice, not from the date of issuing the notice. It should be counted from the receipt of the notice. Quoting DIN on SCN is mandatory requirement. There is a circular which says if the DIN is not there, the notice shall be considered invalid. This is CBIC circular. So it is accepted by the central department, but sometimes not accepted by the state department. Further, this kind of attempt to rejecting the show cause notice is very critical. So proper wisdom should be applied before contesting the whole show cause notice based on this ground. Because if the period is still available, then it would lead to hurting the ego of the officer, and he has all the opportunity, all the available recourse to issue a fresh show cause notice. He will call you again and satisfied his ego in the next hearing. Manner of serving the show cause notice. As we understood earlier, the due process should be followed. In absence of the due process, the entire adjudication process shall becomes at question. So whenever any notice is required to be served, it should be served in the manner in which it is expected under the law. So rule 143(1) says the proper officer shall serve the notice under section 52, 73, 74, so and so, along with a summary thereof in electronic form in GST or DRC 01. And if it is a statement under 73, subsection 3, 74, 3, then it should be a summary in form of DRC 03. A lot of cases has been seen where the only show cause notice has been served without being supplemented by DRC 01 or DRC 02. In that case, the show cause notice is invalid from the beginning. Madhya Pradesh High Court in case of Aakash Garg has held that proceeding have to be undertaken in the manner in which prescribed, and the proceeding undertaken otherwise shall not be valid. Allahabad High Court in case of Krishi Bartan Bhandar has held that there is a manner prescribed under the law in which the notice should be served. Section 169 is providing certain clause providing the manner in which notice should be served. It says that first the notice should be tendered in person, or to the manager, or to the authorized person, or to the legal person or representative. So they are providing the sequence A, B, C, D clause in which if the first sequence is not available, then second should be triggered. Second is by way of courier, speed post or registered post. If that is not available, then the email ID available provided at the time of registration or amended from time to time. Fourth is on the issue made available on the common portal. And then if all are not possible, then it should be affixed on a conspicuous place of the assessee. So this last record should be taken when all the above records are not possible. a attempt invoking the last recourse at the beginning is not valid under the law. So that is what the favorable decision has came in case of Krishi Bartan Bhandar. Show cause notice by way of affixing directly without resorting the previous prescribed note, that too without disclosing time, date, place, manner of such affixtion, cannot said to have been served on the assessee. Time period to reply the show cause notice. I have practically experienced a case when the show cause notice was served on 13th of August, 14th was Sunday, 15th was national holiday, 16th was again followed by an holiday, 17th and 18th was the date to appear before the authority. And if we missed to appear before the authority, and very first day the order was issued within 7 days. And there was no express time limit has been provided in the time. So matter went before the Bombay High Court in case of Sheetal Dilip Jain, wherein High Court held that though there is no specific time limit has been provided for replying the show cause notice, however, the taxpayer has been provided an option to make the payment of tax without penalty within the period of 30 days from the date of receipt the notice. If the order is passed before that prescribed period, it means the benefit or the opportunity of avoiding the litigation by making the payment within 30 days has been taken away from the assessee. They should not have happened. And they took the matter so seriously that they imposed the penalty on the department of rupees 10,000 as a donation to PM Care Fund, and instruction has been issued that that they could at least hold some kind of training orientation session course to apprise and educate his officer on the prevailing law and the rules. Drafting the response. So at the outset, first there should be understanding. First, there should be reading of the show cause notice, what it all about. First, we should understand what is the issue in the show cause notice, whether it is for the factual issues or it is for the legal issues. Then accordingly, a strategy should be framed for responding the show cause notice. Fatal error that should be avoided while responding the show cause notice. Submitted books and records in unnamed proceeding. Some notice has been received over email without having the DIN and demanding the books of accounts and all this, all the records. Those should not be supplied with. We have all the right. We should not be have the fear that if we'll not supply, it will hurt the ego. Anyway, they are not going to entertain us. So we should be aware what is our right and we should act accordingly. Submitting pre-registration information in registration proceedings should be avoided. Admitting valid service of the notice. As we seen, there is a procedure for serving the notice. So non-objecting of a default is admitting of the service. So if the notice is not served in the manner it is specified, it should be contested. It should be objected in the show cause notice. Filing nil written in hurry or under compulsion. Multiple round of written reply in the notice of ASMT 10. So it is an inquiry based on the apparent mistakes appear from the returns. So the proceeding initiated with the difference in the GSTR 1 and 3B. The 3B is having the less payment of the tax, whereas the 1 is having the higher tax liability. Now, the officer is demanding you provide this detail, that detail, all the records, accounts, so that they can frame. So that should be avoided. It should be restricted in the to the information which is shout and which is required to be provided. Detailed reply in respect of observation contained in ADT 02. So after the audit is being concluded, the observations are provided in ADT 01. And we are expected to provide the response in ADT 02. Anyway, the demand which we are not agree, they are going to issue show cause notice. So detailed defense should be avoided, because once your defense is appear before them, then they will make your life difficult by factoring those defense while issuing the show cause notice. So it should be dealt carefully. Not questioning the question before the responding. a good and tasty food is though well prepared, but if it is not prepared, not present well, it will defeat the purpose. So same is applied to whatever strong we are, but if it is not presented in the manner it is expected, then it will lose its charm. So this is a manner in which the reply should be drafted. Uh, if whatever the demand, if some demand is accepted by us, so it should be mentioned at the beginning of the response itself. So it will give to impression to the adjudicating authority that we are sincere enough and we are respecting the law and following the law. So there should be mention of this, and whatever the allegation we are rejecting, then it should be objected in a particular manner. Objection of the law, objection of the fact, objection of the evidence adduced in the notice, rebuttal of countering of the fact, countering of the law, application of the law to the fact, and finally, there should be of the mention. Sometime it is skipped to mention the what is the relief we are expecting. So there should be proper mention that tax should be condoned, the interest and the penalty. All this relief is expected. And then the opportunity of personal hearing. Reply should be made in form DRC 06. So friend, this is all from my side. So I try to make deliver the as much as possible within the permissible time limit. So this is what all from my side. Thank you for your patience listening.
Thank you, Gopal sir, for having this wonderful session on litigation. And nowadays, litigation is a very hot topic in GST. And this is the only opportunity we can grab in future as well. So on behalf of WIRC, I extend really hearty vote of thanks to our faculty, Gopal ji. Sir, you spared a time for this session. I thank you very much for that. Today we have an opportunity to hear you on litigations matter, which is very, and you have enlightened on various aspects. Thank you for that. It's my gratitude to you for sharing your opinion. Thank you, sir, for being here. I would like to have an opportunity to introduce Aumkar Gadgil. He has completed his chartered accountancy in May 2012 and has completed his master degree in commerce in May 2011. He has successfully completed certificate of indirect tax code conducted by ICI in Jan 2014. He was selected as a panel faculty in national level faculty development program conducted by ICI Indirect Tax Committee in Jan 2015. He is a fellow member of ICI. He has been working in the field of indirect tax since last 5 years. He is a practicing chartered accountant and based out in Thane and Pune. He is a proprietor of Mrs. Gadgil AS and Associate Chartered Accountant and a senior consultant with Tax-Wise Advisory Service Private Limited and a consulting partner with Mrs. Karvi and Company Chartered Accountant. Before entering into his practice, he worked with KPMG Mumbai as a manager in direct taxation and also worked with Gokhale and Chartered Accountant as a senior manager in direct tax. He has been GST consultant for small, medium, and MNC entities and has worked in manufacturing, pharmaceutical, hospital, and aviation sectors. He has conducted seminar on GST, excise and service tax for members, students at a various program organized by the Indirect Tax Committee, ICI, WIRC, and study circles. He has been visiting faculty of indirect tax at various institutions. He's recently authored a debut book on GST named as GST Concept to the Core. He has been elected as a branch committee member of Thane branch of WIRC ICI for the term 22-25. Great to have you, sir, here. Now, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I would like to request Gopal ji to present a memento to our next speaker for the day, Aumkar Gadgil sir. I'll request everybody to have a round of applause for the same. I request Omkar sir to take the floor. I request all the members that we'll continue with the session going onwards, and there is no break. So it is already, we have 15 minutes late. So we'll begin, and we have a great session on input tax credit and a very lucrative one also.
A very good evening to all of you. So at the outset, thank you Ashish ji, Bhushan ji, and my fellow speaker Gopal Kedia sir, very learned speaker. Happens to be, I probably just missed his lecture for some time. All right, so as I already understand that we are running behind the schedule. Today is 29th of December, so 9 and 9Cs must be going on. There are some, pending 9 and 9Cs and fresh cases probably jo aaj aaya rahega. So even we have to do and deal with that, everything, right? So what we have planned this session is intricacies and the legal issues under input tax credit. So of course, input tax credit being one of the very critical parts of GST and one of the very dear topic for me always, because that is the major area to learn and litigate, and there majorly the areas where the litigation is going to come up. Already we are already facing some notices, some issues. Fake input tax credit is also always on the news. Every single day you will have some or the other person on the news line with a fake input tax credit scenario. So which was possibly not supposed to be there under GST, but unfortunately we have that as well. So all such legal issues which are there. So now, as we already stand in the 5th year of GST, it is fair enough to assume that the basic provisions of input tax credit are now known to every one of us. We at least know the entitlement, eligibilities and all. So what we have tried to do in this presentation is that we will take up the entitlement, eligibility, block credits and the special circumstances with respect to every possible practical issue which is being faced by us currently in the practice, currently in the litigation scenario, and what the department has been issuing notices for. So based on that, we'll keep that sort of an interaction, and even the presentation will flow in the same manner. If at any point in time you wish to, discuss any point, and please feel free to ask at that then and there. There is no problem. I assure you that I'll not overshoot the session beyond 8:05, 8:10 max. So that would be the permissible time limit for me in case of a 20 minutes curtailed down. All right then. So let's begin. Now, the first thing, as far as the intricacies is concerned, the first part that we would precisely discuss will be about the entitlement and the eligibility of input tax credit and the practical issues which we are facing. Now, as I said, the legal provisions are already known to all of us that when and where the input tax credit will be eligible or when will be entitled for claiming the input tax credit. Now, primarily the provisions of section 16, which is the eligibility defining criteria for us. Okay, section 16 only says that who is entitled to input tax credit? Every registered person is entitled to input tax credit unless he is a person who is, unless a person who is registered at a TDS, TCS deductor or any non-resident taxpayer, etc. In limited circumstances, every registered person, of course, not the ones who are registered under composition levy as well. Every other registered person is entitled for claiming input tax credit in respect of all the goods or services which are used in the course or furtherance of business. Now here, there are a couple of words which are very relevant to discuss. So it says which are used or intended to be used in the course or furtherance of business. Now, when I say used and intended to be used, there happens to be a important point of focus over there that maybe there are certain goods which you are not immediately using. Maybe there are certain services which you are not immediately really relating it to your final outward supply of goods or services. But there are goods or services which you have taken in the business, which are used right now or intended to be used in future. In both the cases, the input tax credit eligibility exists. Now, for that matter, let us say in my factory, I have a fire brigade purchased. Like I have a fire brigade vehicle purchased, fire dowsing vehicle purchased. Or I have a fire extinguishing system in place. Now, whether the usage is active or passive, in most cases, it is going to be passive. So shouldn't the credit be not allowed to you because it has no relatability to your output business? So it is nothing like that. Anything and everything which is in taking the course or in taking the business in future, in furtherance of your business, everything is entitled unless it is specifically blocked under the blocked credits under section 17(5). So prima facie, the eligibility in gate is very wide as compared to the pre-GST regime. Because in pre-GST regime, yes, there were definitions of input services, capital goods under the SENVAT credit provision. There were eligibility of credits under the VAT laws. But right now, since everything is subsumed, we have a wider connotation for claiming of credits. Only what is not available will be there in your block credit under 17(5). The rest, everything which is used or intended to be used in furtherance of business will be eligible. So this is the first ground rule that you need to set. Why? Because every single day when you go to the department and your credit gets challenged, you have to start up your discussions from this first provision, that is entitlement and eligibility. Now, there are very, sometimes they appear to be very funny arguments, and therefore I'm going to also discuss with you all practical arguments or all practical questions that I have come across from the department's end when there is the GST audit which is going on, or there are scrutinies which are going on, there are mismatch notices which we are attending. Now, when I say used or intended to be used, now let's take another example. So one we took, okay, fire extinguishing system, aaj use nahi karna hai. Maybe if there is no contingency, it will never be used, but it has to be available for usage, so I can claim the credit. Okay. Let's say there is some product, there is some purchase that you have made in bulk today, which may be used for next 4, 5, 6 years. So today you are claiming the input tax credit. You are also allowed to use that input tax credit against any of your outward supplies made today. Does not necessarily mean that whatever you purchase today has to be consumed today. It can be consumed at any point in time. So the usage is not immediate and the usage is not directly related to your final output. Yes, it has to have some relevance in the course of furtherance of business, and that is the very subjective term relevance which gets challenged. That now how they challenge relevance as a word, I'll tell you. So I'll give you a simple example, again, practical case. So in one of the cases, the company is engaged in the business of PAN card distribution, okay, PAN distribution business. Now we have taken the credit of air conditioning systems. We have taken the credit of travel of employees who are coming from one branch to another branch, hotel stays of employees, everything we take the credit because there is nothing which is debarring in section 17 subsection 5. There's nothing blocked in that. Now I had a query raised by the department. The learned officer said that air conditioning system का आपके PAN card business से कोई लेना देना नहीं है, so you should not get the credit. Then AC का AMC, UPS का AMCs, your batteries का AMC, nothing has got any relevance with your final products, with your final service that you are providing, so none of the credits will be allowed. So then I told, I mean, this was happening in Bangalore. I told him that, sir, today I have come here by the flight. We are staying in a hotel and all credits I am claiming. So he said that none of will be allowed because they are all for personal use, because you as a person are enjoying the benefit of. Now, when it comes to such a fundamental level of getting challenged, then your wide connotation has to come to your rescue definitely. Now, how we perceive it, that right, we set a ground rule. Anything that is there in 17.5, disallowed, no problem. But anything that is not there in 17.5, it has to be allowed, because what the primary provision says that all goods or services which are used or intended to be used in the course of furtherance of business will be eligible for claiming input tax credit. So this is the principal point. We have argued the case already. We are yet to receive the response from them. Now, then we come further that there are specific conditions which are put up for claiming the credit, which are given in section 16 subsection 2. Notwithstanding anything contained in this section, no registered person shall be entitled to claim input tax credit in respect of any supply of goods or services or both to him, unless now there are certain conditions. So we'll just see a couple of conditions and then we'll see a few questions on those. Now, the first condition is he is in possession of a tax invoice, debit note issued by a supplier registered under this act, or such other tax paying documents as may be prescribed. Now, when you say the first condition is he should be in possession of an invoice or a debit note or any other tax paying document. Let's try to analyze a few beyond invoice and debit note. Now, invoice, it has to be a legitimate tax invoice because it has to get containing all those, all those contents like suppliers, GSTN, recipients, GSTN, address, name, rate, quantity, HSN, SSC code, value, everything. The place of supply, most importantly, everything has to be there. Only then it will be considered a valid tax invoice. So merely having an invoice does not suffice. It has to be an invoice in accordance with the rules which are set under Rule 34 for the invoicing, provision of Section 34 for invoicing. Then when I say a debit note, now debit note is a very confusing document, because debit note ye word बहुत commonly used होता है in accounting terminologies also. But when I say debit note, it only means a debit note under Section 34 of the CGST Act. There is no other debit note which gets covered or envisaged under this particular provision. So then that debit note has to be a GST enabled document. It has to be issued in accordance with the GST provisions, GST rules. Merely for account adjustment, if there is any document issued called debit note, that will not be allowed. Now, which are the other tax paying documents on the basis of which I'm going to claim the credit? So what happens when you import goods? What is the document based on which we can claim the credit? Yes? Perfect. Bill of entry. So in the bill of entry, there is a IGST amount mentioned. In the bill of entry, the GSTIN of the importer has to be mentioned. In the bill of entry, the name of the importer has to be mentioned. Okay, then I'm entitled for claiming the input tax credit. Then for the purpose of reverse charge mechanism based transactions, we have this, we used to call it as self-invoice under the service tax regime. Now we call it as a payment voucher, particularly in technical terms under the GST law. It is called as a payment voucher. So he has to be in possession of a tax paying documents. That is the requisite, that is a condition. Now let's come to the practical side of it. Now in yesterday only, in one of the cases, the learned officer asked me that there are certain documents which I said that, sir, we have during COVID, we had received certain documents only online. We did not get any hard copies at that time. We had a lockdown. So we gave him all the digitally signed invoices in hand for digitally signed invoices का हमने पूरा एक backup निकाल के उनको verification के लिए दे दिया था. Now the officer had a challenge saying that unless the invoice is in a hard copy, you will not be allowed the credit only. So that is what his challenge was. So I said that why? Like, what is the logic behind that? So he says that you should be in possession बोला है. तो possession का meaning होता है that you should be in physical possession of the document. Now, of course, this is definitely not the case. Now, when you have a e-document, e-invoice permissible, when you have a electronically signed document, when you have a document which was signed because it was a lockdown and it was signed and scanned and given to you, absolutely no challenge in claiming credit in respect of that document. Even though you don't have that document physically today, there is also no problem. The only requirement is that even though the electronic document exists, it should contain all the details which are to be there in a tax invoice or on a debit note. That's it. That is the only requirement. So there are practical scenarios where even this aspect gets challenged, and what we experience from the practical case only, that such questions are also being raised. Then the second scenario, the second condition is he has received the goods or services or both. Now, the entire talk about the fake input tax credit revolves around this particular aspect. Whether you have received the goods or services or not, and in the absence of anything like that, it amounts to a fake input tax credit. Now see, generally, whatever fake input tax credit news you must have read, all 4,000 crore, 5,000 crores, 1,000 crores and above. Club hi bahut bada hai. There's nothing, 50, 60 crores aisa kuch nahi hota. If it is an input tax credit fake invoice case, then it has to be about hundreds of crores, thousands of crores. So these guys are very clear that, okay, they don't have anything in material as such. They don't have goods, they don't have services. They just have invoices. They have to circulate the invoices and pass on the credits. But the condition over here says that you should have, you should receive the goods or services. Now, when you talk about receipt of goods, it has to be physical. If you are receiving goods at your own premises, at your own factory, that is completely fine. Now, what if, let's suppose that what if I have a place which is my job workers' premises where I'm ordering the material directly. Now, there are a lot of cases currently going on this aspect. When I say that physical receipt of goods is relevant and compulsory, it is. But where it has to be received, it is a challenging scenario. Now, see, we have an exception wherein bill to ship to concept exists. If there's a bill to ship to transaction, bill to party will only get the bill and ship to party will get the physical goods. That is defined, that is given. In case of job workers scenario, let's say I am having a, let's say my factory is in Andheri. My job worker is located somewhere in Bhiwandi. And let's say the material is coming from Nashik. Now it doesn't make sense to get the material here first and then send it to the job worker. So obviously I say that, okay, boss, make it a bill to Andheri and ship to Bhiwandi transaction. Now, when that goods physically enter my job worker's premises, it's a deemed receipt of goods for me on the basis of this bill to ship to transaction. So here again, there is no challenge. Now, in case of real estate, currently we are facing a litigation. So I'll just give you a simple example what happened there. I have two sites across the road. Like one site is going over here, which happens to be my office also. Just across the road, there is a second site which was going on. Now what happened is that मेरा registered office आज भी यही building में है. All my customer invoices and customer demand letters, etc., are going from this office only. But my site is going on the other side of the road. Now all the goods which are received for that site, for that particular construction site, now the department has disallowed the entire input tax credit on all the goods which were received there and for which we claim the credit, citing that it is not a premises in your registration, either as an additional place of business or anything. So you are not allowed to claim the input tax credit. Now here when we say that, okay, intricacy aspect of it, that here this provision needs to be tested. Now, if I do a plain reading, he says that, the provision says that he has received the goods or services. Now, factually, there is no challenge that whether I have received the goods or services or not. I have received the goods. I have received the services. They have been received at such a premises which is not there in my registration as on today. That is the only fallacy over here. So of course the department says that nahi aisa nahi chalta hai ki aapka wo site you should have registered as an additional place of business. Now for that matter, I just slightly try to tweak in the provisions of this registration. Now registration provision very clearly says that every person should have a registration in every state from where he makes a taxable supplier. So I have a registration already. I have a registration in gate number 102, but that site is in gate number 104. Have I registered the additional place of business? The answer is no. Okay, I have not registered as an additional place of business. Now, the challenge is that I said that all my delivery, I mean, all the addresses of delivery on the invoices was gate number 104. So he says that it is being received at such a place which is not registered. So you are not getting the input tax credit. Now I slightly tried to go in the provision of registration. Additional place of business may be relevance kya hai, that I should be making some supply from that transaction, from that particular place. Now I am not making any supply only from that place because technically all my invoices go from this side. All my demand letters are issued from this gate number 102. So I am saying that my service of construction, which is being provided to the customers also, is going from this place. Place of supply for construction service is 104, no doubt about that. But if you want to deny my input tax credit, show me some substantial reason to deny that, just because that premises is not registered. So here, of course, these are the practical challenges when it comes to when you say you have received the goods or not. We have received, we have evidently received, everything is there, but they have a challenge with the premise. Now here, maximum thing what happens is in the excise regime, in the central excise regime, jurisdiction had a lot of importance. So jurisdiction made a lot of difference whether the goods had entered that premises, X premises, Y premises, because they could be pertaining to different jurisdictional officers also. However, under the GST regime, we don't find a challenge regarding such things. In case of a construction business, there are often sites which are going to come up. So whether every time you will be really willing to take a registration is a practical question to be taken into consideration. Yes, to have a hassle-free transaction, additional place of business register करने में कोई दिक्कत था तो नहीं वैसे. But now it was all historic. नहीं हुआ था, that was the fact of the case. So here we still have very much argued the case. We have also received a show cause notice to that effect after the audit. Show cause notice has also been issued. The order was also obviously confirmed, and so we have gone into the appeals right now for challenging this credit. Now, construction mein aaj ke tarikh mein, apart from, I mean, if it is a residential real estate project, it doesn't matter because you're not getting credits only. But for the purpose of a safer scenario, better get it registered, better have that additional place of business registered so that there is no loose end to that. Now, when we talk about this receipt of goods, it is still understandable because something tangible is coming. You can prove up goods receipt note de sakte ho. You can give some requisition notes. You can give some gate entry references, etc. But when you say receipt of services, it is always difficult to prove that you have received the services or not. So technically, receipt of services can be made evident by what basis? So, okay, we can say that, okay, services are being received. How the services have been received? So services were received by way of, say, professional consultancy, auditing services, company secretary services, internet telecommunication services, etc. Now, internet telecommunication, very much evident. Ke office mein Wi-Fi chal raha hai, internet chal raha hai, my VPN is working, so I can prove that. When I talk about telephone services, it is existing. I'm getting bills from time to time, so no problem. When I talk about professional consultancy services, now that is something, let's say I have said that there was a business transformation coach who came and who has done some training for my employees. Unfortunately, that day we didn't have anybody to click photographs. There was no Insta post. There was nothing to prove that aisa kuch hua tha. Now, in such case, what do you do? How do you prove that? So there has to be some trail to that. Maybe the booking, the requisition order, which was, I mean, the requisition mail, which was sent to that coach that, okay, you need to come and train our employees, something like that. So receipt of services becomes more challenging to prove. Now, also, there is a build to ship to concept of services, even in services, especially for the entities which are having multiple registrations within the country. So now let's say that I have a agreement with one of the courier companies, which is based in Mumbai, and my head office is also in Mumbai, but I have registration in 25 states. My agreement is that wherever in 25 states I will need your courier service, you have to give it to me as a part of this agreement. जो भी बिलिंग वगैरह होगा वो आप इंटरनल सेटल करो, हमको एक ही इनवॉइस आना चाहिए. Now here what happens is that, of course, place of supply is to be considered very relevant for determining when and where the tax is to be charged. But then if the courier company is doing that, like they are providing this service saying that the Mumbai courier office becomes their recipient of service, they are doing that service on behalf of their head office. In all such cases, the law is seeing it as very carefully that, okay, you may have a contract between head office to head office. It is a P2P basis contract. The beneficiaries of services are across the country. So that's why they came up with the concept of one, you have a ISD, input service distributor. Second, there is a concept which is not defined in the GST Act anywhere, which is called as cross charge. Now, cross charge is dependent on the principles which are laid down in Schedule 1, which talks about the deemed supply of services or deemed supply of goods between the related parties or distinct persons. So for the, I mean, the funny part is that audit में आके भी आपको cross charge के लिए questions पूछे जाते हैं, that why you have not done cross charge, why you have not taken ISD. ISD at least, okay, it is, you can prove you by having a registration. But when they come and challenge you that why cross charge was not done, there are certain relevance which comes from the input tax credit perspective. So I showed that there is a bill of a vendor, जिसमें Maharashtra में I'm getting say 5 or 6 lakh rupees of input tax credit, but the beneficiaries of this register, I mean this particular service are all over the country. My all registrations, 25 registrations across the country. So there the challenge which is given by the department is that this entire service is not consumed in Maharashtra. The most of the services are consumed by all the state registrations, and therefore on the basis of destination based consumption tax, this amount needs to be transferred to the respective states. And there has to be the distribution of revenue in that case. And in that case, you can only do it if you don't have a ISD registration. The only way you do it, that will be by way of issuing the cross charge invoices across the entity. So they will not have any financial impact on your books per se, but they will have a GST impact. They will have an outward liability in Maharashtra, and they will have the input tax credits in all those respective states. So when it comes to deemed receipt of service, this area is again under a massive scrutiny currently also, when we are talking right now at this moment. Cross charge के ऊपर बहुत सारा scrutiny चल रहा है. And then they are challenging all the services which are of a common consumption. Let's say that company, again, same example, 25 states में registration है, Mumbai में head office है. You are taking advertisement services over here. Now, benefit of advertisement is endured by all the branches. So consumption based principle के हिसाब से the benefit should pass on, the credit should also be passed on to all the respective states. The revenue should pass on to all the respective states. You cannot consume all the credit sitting here in Maharashtra. And therefore Maharashtra, Karnataka, Telangana, Delhi, these are the and Tamil Nadu for that matter, these are some of the places where maximum such type of inquiries are happening, that if major consumption of services is happening here, but the benefits are available all across the country, why it is not so distributed. Now, when they say auditor services, again, there is no defense to that. Auditor service hai, across all the states hai, benefit, मतलब हमारे states में तो सिर्फ GST registration के लिए बटा हुआ है. Entity is one and the same. So when the auditor is doing the audit for the company, he is signing the balance sheet of the company, which is one single entity. Again, the perception of the law is that the benefits are passed on to, I mean, the benefits are enjoyed by all the states who are distinct persons to each other. And therefore, this concept of deemed receipt of service has come to a broader, has come in a very broader perspective right now. And re-looking is happening across all the companies, because when they are starting to getting questioned on these bases as to why it was not done earlier. Now see, 17, 18, 18, 19 के लिए जब अभी ये cross charge के questions आते हैं, one thing is also there. Now we are giving an argument that, sir, we understand cross charge has to be made, but the management has not reached a conclusion what should be the basis of cross charge. And this time we had a board meeting with a specific agenda that cross charging has to be decided. The bifurcation or the distribution of cross charge has to be decided. So today we are raising the invoice for cross charge. Now, thankfully, there is no time of supply provision which is dedicatedly meant for this deemed supply. So you can play around those provisions and still enjoy the credit, because it may be a cross charge for 17, 18 or 18, 19 or 19, 20 or 20, 21, now even 21, 22, जिसका credit लेने का time जा चुका है. But you can still issue the invoice today saying that, okay, cross charge deemed supply has happened today, and therefore I am saying that today becomes the relevant time for claiming the time of supply, for passing the credit. So here, I mean, these are certain possible challenges under the receipt of goods and services. Receipt of goods, again, receipt of goods may, like when I was trying to correlate it with the fake invoices aspect, wherever there are fake invoices scenarios, again, you're not getting the credit because the goods are not being received only. So now I'll give you a domestic example. Domestic in the sense that every market probably will find this. So let's say that I'm an electronic goods seller. During the day, I have sold 10 laptops. Okay, during the day, I have sold 10 laptops to 10 individual customers who are consumers, B2C supplies. Now, one Mr. Bhushan comes to me and says that, okay, I need invoices for 10 laptops. So he has come to me only for taking a what, invoice or laptop? Invoice. He is not interested in laptop. So he comes to me and says that, sir, 10 laptop ka invoice chahiye. Now, those innocent B2C buyers, they have got laptops, they have got invoices, they have got warranties, everything. But they are all B2C buyers, right? So I am not reporting their transactions anywhere on the GST portal with their individual GST numbers, etc., because they don't have any. So now what I do, in the evening, Mr. Bhushan comes to me that, okay, sir, 10 laptop, 50,000 ka 10 laptop, 5 lakh rupees. 18% GST है, so 18 5 90, 90,000 का GST credit मुझे मिल जाएगा. So you give me this invoice. So he takes the invoice. I don't report B2C supply. I report that entire transaction as a B2B supply. Now, I'm not giving constructive fraud idea. I'm just telling you practical case. तो मैं वो report भी करता हूँ. B2B report किया, GSTR1 में दिखाया. He has also received the bill. He makes the payment also to me. Everything is nice till this point. Now the point is, laptops kahan pe? Has Mr. Bhushan received the laptop? No. Has Mr. Bhushan taken the input tax credit? The answer is yes. So now there is a technical issue that he forgot to receive laptops. And laptops are there with some 10 people who are there in the market who are the common man buyer who is a B2C buyer. So they have the laptops today. Now the problem is that here he has received the invoice. He has made the payment. Of course, whatever payment I receive out of that GST में हमेशा distribution है. मतलब 5 लाख का issue है ही नहीं. 90,000 का जो credit उनको मिलना है उसमें से कितना actual वो पैसा उन्होंने मेरे को देते हैं. Maybe they'll give me back 25-30,000 out of that. I am happy that बिना कुछ किए हुए 30-40 हज़ार रुपए कैश में मिल गया. Now let's say भूषण की कंपनी का ऑडिट होता है, GST ऑडिट होता है. मैं बोलता हूँ 10 लैपटॉप खरीदा, ओके वेरी गुड, शो मी दोस 10 लैपटॉप्स. तो बोलते नहीं, वो मेरे स्टाफ के पास है, वो आर ऑन डिफरेंट कस्टमर लोकेशन. So how do you audit a laptop? So you will say that, okay, you say, show me the asset codification. You say, show me it in the balance sheet addition to fixed asset. Then वो asset codification से एक दो laptop तो verify करवाओ. So he is very smart. He gets some random 10 laptops to me. Now, if I'm really interested in doing the audit, I can find it in a minute. Like you have the identification numbers for every device, every electronic device. You can immediately trace that, boss, this is not that laptop. You cannot replicate the codes numbers at least that are given, at least in a prima facie scenario. So this not receipt of goods में ये भी एक category है because of which these all recoveries are happening. Okay. Yes. Yes, ma'am, please. 5 lakh? So he'll pay me online, like he will make me the legitimate payment, but that money I have to give him back. But when I give him back, I don't show it on the records. Yeah, so that is my headache then, how to give him back. So if he gives me 5,90,000, then out of the 5,90,000, we have to share that out of that 90,000, what really I am going to retain, what he is going to get. So he enjoys a benefit of 90,000, but then I need to get something for doing this entire transaction. Because I have kept those 5 B2C transactions, 10 B2C transactions off the record. They have not come to my records. According to my record now, I have sold only to one person 10 laptops. So I get money in white, I give that money back to him in whichever manner it is agreed or whichever is convenient. And this is how it gets settled. So mobile industry, laptops, even electronic goods, tablets, all these have been the maximum areas of such kind of frauds. And here practical cases here. So yes, I think most of you will agree that this is how it has happened. Now see, in a very innocent manner, I'll tell you that so many times when you buy things online, you will see that, okay, you have a GST number, then you can put that and get the benefit of GST. Somebody comes to you, अरे मेरे दोस्त के भाई का GST number है, ले लेते हैं. हाँ? Correct. iPhone में तो दीवाने हो गए थे वो लोग. कितने सारे दोस्त के भाई या चाचा विचा इन लोग के पास, सबके पास आईफोन का क्रेडिट पड़ा हुआ है, उनके पास आईफोन ही नहीं है. All this innocently done. It is not done with a fraudulent mind, but it is a case of non-eligibility of tax credit. Because those devices are not there today with that recipient, who is a recipient on the books. Yes, sir. Yes. I'll, sir, briefly come to the 2A issue in a while, because even that the circular issued day before yesterday also has some relief. So I'll come to that in a detailed discussion. Yes, sir. Okay. So, sir, what we are doing generally whenever we are giving this advisory on cross-charging, what we are saying that you first identify all the common expenses. It is audit fees, advertising, VPN cost or server cost, everything. Now, there has to be some logical equitable basis for distributing of this credit. So generally it is turnover of the branch. Generally, it will be the turnover of the branch. But if you feel that, okay, there is some different mechanism. So let's say that I have a server cost. So I'll say the number of nodes which are available in each of the center or each of my branch. Based on that, I will distribute the cost. So there has to be some logical equitable basis, which will be determined on the nature of service also. Generally in costing, as we used to learn about the apportionment of overheads. A similar logic needs to be applied over here. And there is, thankfully, like I said, there is no specific timeline which is defined in law or identified in the law. And therefore, it is your discretion. Okay, generally what we say, once in a quarter, you do this distribution. If the company is of a higher ticket size. Or we'll say twice in a year, you do this distribution. That first 6 months ka jitna bhi common kharcha identify karo, half yearly aapka records ready hai, then you can distribute that. But like I said, you may have different mechanisms of distribution. Turnover always becomes the basic basis. Now, there are certain branches which may be exclusively engaged in exempted supplies. There is a possibility like that. So there also there is a problem, because then the department is challenging that, okay, there is one of the branch which is completely into exempt supply. So you are not forcefully giving that credit to that branch because it doesn't have any output tax. So there also there are certain issues. So we need to identify on that basis how the distribution. So firstly, identification of expenses. Second, basis of distribution. Third, eligibility of the credit which can be enjoyed by the branch or not. That is the third criteria. Yes. Correct. Yes. Because the recipient registration is not eligible for credit because they don't have any outward taxable supply. Now, in that also, I'll tell you what we generally do. Like the HO does work for the branch also does some work for the HO. So we can also raise an invoice from the branch to the HO saying, okay, boss, this is taxable. Baki bole mera output rahega exempted. So at least some portion you can salvage out of that. Yes, there are challenges because of course they are going to say that, okay, this is a common receipt of service to you from the head office. So you cannot. No. Correct. So yes. But then again, the concept of deemed consumption, the deemed supply of service under Schedule 1, that is what hits the most. So ideally, the revenue has to be enjoyed by all the states. Otherwise, then this entire system gets disturbed. So that is, and even like in Maharashtra, because I'm getting maximum credit, Maharashtra government is saying that, boss, mere ko to paisa mil hi nahi raha because maximum mera to sab credit se hi ja raha hai, output liabilities. Nothing is coming in cash per se, new cash input. So that's a challenge. Yes. Correct. Yes. Yeah. So I'll tell you. So what sir is asking that, let's say, because I said that 17-18 ka credit मैं आज distribute करना चाहता हूँ. I'm raising an invoice today from the head office to the branch. But then he is saying that, how are you going to justify the fact that invoice issuance time has also expired and your credit eligibility time has also expired under the relevant provision? Then how are you going to justify this transaction? Correct? This is the question. So sir, now what we say that, like, because it's a deemed supply, there was no actual supply about this cross charge mechanism. What we say that completion of a service part of my time of supply provisions, the date of issuance of invoice, the date of completion of service, these are the two broader points on which my invoice issuance will be depending. What is the meaning of completion of service is to be understood from every transaction. Now I am saying that the decision to issue a cross charge invoice was done today. So for this deemed supply, the completion of service is today. It's a litigative position. I completely appreciate, but I am only substantiating my stand saying that it's a completion of service today because the decision to determine how much amount of tax has to be cross charged has been done today. So that deemed supply has got completed today. So today becomes the relevant date for me from the perspective of time of supply. Now, basis that if I issue an invoice today, it is going to go with today's date. So my recipient registered person is not going to have a problem in claiming the credit because he is very much within the timelines for claiming the input tax credit. So challenge is only when, as you said, that I am saying the date of completion of service is today. What if the department says that the moment you received the input service, only that time only the benefits had passed? Now this is the point where there can be a conflict. Yes. Yeah, and mainly for continuous supply of service, there has to be a contract for supply of goods or services, wherein there is a time interval that is called as, there has to be some event in that entire service. Yes. So yes, there is a gray situation, but like I said, ultimately what happens, because it becomes like a revenue neutral transaction. Now, what challenges we are getting is that when in audit also we are saying that, okay, आज हम लोग invoice issue करते हैं, audit का point close कर देते हैं. So then they say that invoice आप आज issue करो, tax liability आज आप भरो, but credit नहीं लेना है सामने वाले, मतलब सामने वाले आपके registration. So that we say you, for that you issue a separate notice if you want to challenge, because firstly क्या होता है that state to state they cannot issue one comprehensive notice. So of course they do share this data with their counterparts in the other state. Then they'll say that, okay, boss, issue a notice to him. But yeah, we are definitely taking this legal stand, no half measures in when I'm telling you this. We have definitely taken this legal stand and we are claiming the credit. Yeah. It is. Okay. So now just few practical questions. कुछ लोगों को देख के मुझे इतना motivation आ रहा है because they are sleeping so nice. I understand it's a very chilling temperature out over here. No worries. I don't bother anybody who is taking a rest in the day, so it's okay. Let's see some questions. They are all in front of you. Okay, practical question, ऐसे section 16(2) के ऊपर. So which are the other documents that we already discussed? The bill of entry and payment vouchers. Then the additionally from that, for that matter, now there is some practical issue like मेरा foreign trade policy के अंदर, let's say I had taken some advance authorization or I had taken some authorization or EPCG, something like that, where I had claimed a duty exemption upfront. There are certain conditions under the foreign trade policy that if you are taking certain benefits, then you have to achieve the export obligation. So if I have taken some benefit of non-paying a duty under the foreign trade policy, then I have an export obligation to meet. And if I fail to meet the export obligation, I have to pay the duty. Now let's say 17-18 का export obligation था जो मैंने meetup नहीं किया, जिसके लिए आज मुझे DGFT ने notice issue किया that boss you should pay the customs duty, IGST, everything. So today I paid the tax. I paid the tax, I paid the basic custom duties, social welfare such as IGST, everything. आज मैं जब पे करता हूँ, I only have a challan copy. I don't have any payment voucher. I don't have any other document like invoice or anything like that. On my bill of entry, in fact, there was no tax mentioned at all because I was importing under the advanced license. So I was having an exemption, upfront exemption. So today this challan becomes my source of claiming the credit. Now, again, it is challengeable. It is not mentioned anywhere in the rules that challan paid for defaults under DGFT or something like that. So these are some documents which are not there in the law, but which needs to be like argued upon because basis that you can claim the credit. Now, physical receipt of goods. So the same case that I discussed. So I'm not taking it up again. Site A, site B wala. Digitally signed invoice, physically signed. Only problem if you have a digitally signed invoice. If you have a invoice जिसमें sign करके scanned image आपके पास है, तो भी कोई problem नहीं. Now, if you see in so many of the companies nowadays, you have this inventory management companies who are managing your document inventories. अब ये documents किधर तो पड़े गोडाउन में, you don't even know भिवंडी किधर भी रहेगा ऐसे. So these guys, what they do, they'll give you the scanned copies and on your all SAP or ERP, whichever system you're using, that at the click of the button, you will have that document scanned and very much available. So when you have the department visiting you, they'll show that document kidhar hai, to aap dikha dete ho. I want hard copy. Generally what you do, your guy will just give you a printout and le lo, hard copy chahiye tha. That hurts their ego very much. It's a very bad thing to do. So you have to first tell them that, sir, ऐसा हुआ है कि so and so place पे हमारा documents आता है. Then they'll say, get all those documents. कल का कल मेरे को चाहिए. Now you know how to defer that because you say that well, it is located in Karnataka. I don't know how much time it is going to take to come for those documents to come. आपका खुद का company का दूसरे branch से document आने को कितना time लगता है? Forget about the inventory managing companies. Generally, you will see sales guys, marketing guys, they'll have invoices in their pockets. फिर जब वो invoice आता है वो ऐसा twisted, उसपे कि कुछ हिसाब विसाब लिखा है, किसी पे भेल गिरा है, ऐसा सब मस्त invoices होते हैं. Now, there are such kind of states of documents because they know that अपने पास electronic invoice है, so this doesn't really matter. So there is no problem at all in having any electronic form of document. You can very much claim the credit. Like I said, it has to have the contents of invoice very much there, like your GST and place of supply, everything. Then there is no problem in claiming the credit. Now, can a bank statement be considered as a valid document for claiming credit? So do banks keep on issuing invoices to you every month? They may or they may not, because the bank statement can be deemed to be a invoice in such case. For claiming credit, your GST IN generally comes on the bank statement, you see. Generally, if you'll have a current account or anything like that, so bank will put a GST number of you. They'll also punch the invoices for that matter. Now, what about the air tickets? So you're taking an air ticket from say Vistara or Indigo, then they'll send you invoices. But even if you don't have, sometimes you don't have the invoice only, but you'll have it entry in the GSTR 2A, 2B, आपके इसमें दिखता है कि अरे Vistara है, Indigo है, आपको दिखता है. Now, there is a specific problem out here. Sometimes what happens, your employees who are traveling, they swipe the tickets on their credit cards. Okay, all these sales and all these guys, they'll swipe the tickets on their credit cards. They'll give the GST details of the company, but they'll swipe it on the credit card in their own name. Now, these tickets officers are denying, saying that, okay, boss, there is a provision that payment has to be made to the vendor within 180 days. This company never made any payment to the vendor. The payment was done by Mr. Sharma or Verma, jo bhi. Now, here also, it's a practical scenario that, okay, employees are bound to make expenses through their credit cards. You are paying their credit card bills from the corporate account. So that credit card statement punching becomes essentially important. अभी जनरली अपना अकाउंट्स पेबल वाले क्या करते हैं, क्रेडिट कार्ड स्टेटमेंट आया, हाँ, क्रेडिट कार्ड एक्सपेंसेस टू एक्सपेंस पेबल टू बैंक, खत्म. फिर उसमें अपना ट्रांसपोर्टेशन एयर टिकट वाला ये दिखता ही नहीं है किधर पे. Then it becomes difficult to identify that you have not received a service, only how you are claiming the credit. So this becomes like a internal audit point that you need to punch the credit card statement in detail, because then only your expenses can be identified, the services can be identified. No, it's not a problem. Even you are paying through the credit card or any Impress account or anything for that matter. वो अभी कोई wallet से करता है, कोई कैसे करता है. Point is that this is a practical scenario that there is no direct, मतलब during that particular ticket, there was no privity between the airline and the company, but recipient of service में Mr. Sanjay Verma is a beneficiary of that service because he is traveling. His name has to be there on the ticket. He has to get a boarding pass. But that ticket is issued in the name of the company because the company details are there. So that's why you put a GST. And even you go on IRCTC website these days, they'll ask you to put the GST and if you have any. So no problem. वहाँ पे भी बिंदास ticket ले लो. There only the challenge is that they are saying that boss, this is personal service. This is got nothing to do with their services of the company. So now that is something that you need to prove. कि आपका बंदा अगर बैंगलोर गया था, अभी कोई बैंगलोर में जाके अपने दोस्तों के साथ कोई क्लब में गया है, ये पोस्टेड फोटोज ऑन इंस्टाग्राम ये वो बोला देखो ये तो पर्सनल कंजम्पशन. They have also become very tech savvy. I'll tell you. I mean, I have been experiencing this. That they become very tech savvy. They'll come with tablets and they'll show you all this Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook chats, everything. So we have to be very clear. अभी बंदा बैंगलोर गया अपने दोस्तों को नहीं मिल सकता ऐसा किधर लिखा है लो. He has gone for office work. He had no intentions of any trip, but this is all factual. This has to be only proved by virtue of your some records or trails. Now, there was a case law in between, like probably now 1 year back, the DY Beethal Enterprises versus State Tax Officer. There was a case and which had excited a lot of people around on this. So see, there is one of the condition that tax charge in respect of supply has been actually paid to the government. All this 2A, 3B mismatch, usi ke around. Now in this DY Beethal judgment, it was, I guess, of Madras High Court. Not very sure of the High Court, but it was of the High Court. Writ petition se aaya. DY Beethal mein, the Honorable High Court has only said that the recipient of supply should be challenged subsequently. Primarily, you should catch hold of the supplier who has defaulted in tax payment to the government, because of which the recipient is not getting the credit. मतलब 2A 3B में 2A में नहीं आया है, इसके लिए आप पहले recipient को मत पकड़ो, पहले supplier को पकड़ो. They have only commented upon the prioritization. They don't say that तो अभी you know that you must have received some WhatsApps also generally. That relief to the taxpayers, recipient cannot be caught, recipient cannot credit cannot be challenged वगैरह वगैरह ऐसा बहुत कुछ लोगों ने भेज दिया खुद ही. High Court ने ऐसा कुछ लिखा ही नहीं था. So we have all interpretation of statutes amongst us who will just simply say that because the High Court has only said that priority has to be given to the supplier, it not to the recipient. So उस केस में ऐसा हुआ था कि ये लोग ने supplier को chase ही नहीं किया. The department went on chasing the recipient. So that was the only observation remark which was made in DY Beethal judgment. There was nothing which was giving a relief to the recipient. Now GSTR 2A 3B के ऊपर day before yesterday only we have received a circular number 183, which was already there in Maharashtra some time back. Then that circular had suddenly vanished. And then that circular is present today, like circular 183, which was issued day before yesterday, which now says that for FY 17-18 and 18-19, wherever there is a mismatch between GSTR 2A and 3B, if you are able to give a CA certificate, which verifies and vouches for the fact that the taxes have been actually paid, the transactions actually took place, and everything was genuine about that transaction, then the recipient can claim the credit. You see, the problem here is, now there was a lot of buzz and excitement that, okay, new area of practice आ गया, अपने को certification का काम आ गया. I feel that running away from certification has to be the first priority. No, because that was, unfortunately, that was only there in Maharashtra. We only have a printed copy of that, but somehow that circular is not new certificate. Now see, it is from the supplier's perspective that, see, who can give you this certificate? I, as a chartered accountant, I will not rely on some supplier of my client का supplier के ऊपर मैं क्यों भरोसा करूं कि भाई इसने tax भरा था. अच्छा, and it is not even easy to verify. See, if I want to give you a certificate that आपने किसी को supply किया and उसका tax आपने भरा है, what is the basis of verification? I will get a list of your GSTR 1 transactions. I'll get the list of tax that you have paid through GSTR 3B. But tomorrow you may go and claim that नहीं ये तो इसका tax था ही नहीं, ये तो कोई और previous invoices था, उसका tax मैंने भरा है. Then what to do in such case? I am going to be just keeping my hands off this certification. मुझे मालूम ही नहीं कि 3B has no color to it. जैसे 3B में क्रेडिट का कोई कलर नहीं है, वैसे आउटवर्ड लाइबिलिटी का कोई कलर नहीं. कल को आपने बोला नहीं मैंने तो ये 3 महीने पहले का टैक्स भरा था, बट इसके ऊपर से बहुत तकलीफ आ सकते हैं. सो I mean, I'm not saying that, okay, you cannot issue a certificate, but it is really difficult to rely on the authenticity of that transaction. So yes, there's a challenge. Now this 2A, 3B, see, anyways, right now, I already have many, I mean, मेरे से सबका ही होगा कि कितना सारा अपील्स तो कमिश्नर अपील्स के पास पड़ा हुआ है जहाँ पे 2A, 3B मिसमैच के ऊपर से ऑर्डर्स कंफर्म हो चुके हैं. We have already gone ahead claimed that we are going to claim this credit 31st December 2021 तक जितना भी 2A 3B mismatch है, and where I have all the other conditions satisfied that I have received the goods, I have received the invoice, the purchases are genuine, everything, I am going to claim that credit because वहाँ पे the basis was only rule 36 sub rule 4, which was talking about this limitation as per 2A. There was no explicit provision like section 16(2)AA, which now says that the input tax credit shall be limited to only that much of amount which is reflected by the supplier in his outward return. So this 16 subsection 2 clause AA has come into effect only with effect from 1st January 2022. This particular provision AA. The details of invoices of debit note or invoice referred to in clause A has been furnished by the supplier in the statement of outward supply, and such details have been communicated to the recipient of such invoice or debit note in the manner specified. This provision 16 subsection 2 clause AA has an effective date of applicability as 1st January 2022. So all the disputes before that, ignoring that circular which has been issued day before yesterday, it's a welcome step, no doubt, but then वो difficult है क्योंकि मुझे अभी एक simple question है. I have defaulted, let's say my client had defaulted, later on he rectified, he filed returns, he has paid the tax, everything has been done. Now tomorrow he has 20 or 100 customers जो उसको बोलते हैं that भाई हम लोग को certificate दो. कितने लोगों के लिए आप कितना certificates issue करोगे and क्या basis पे rely करोगे? It is such a big challenge. Means कल को ऐसा समझता है कि नहीं ये टैक्स तो भरा ही नहीं था, मतलब who is going to be then held responsible? अपना यूडिन के साथ हम लोग उधर हाजिर हो जाएंगे. Because for how many transactions you are vouching, for how many amounts you are vouching, you don't really know. And whether that is the actual tax paid or not, that also you don't know. Now you see, there are certain issues जो pre-deposit के ऊपर से भी issues हुए थे. लोगों ने क्या किया था? Pre-GST regime के cases का भी pre-deposit DRC 03 से भर दिया. सर्विस टैक्स का केस था, अपील था, उसका pre-deposit उन्होंने पेमेंट कर दिया DRC 03 से. Now DRC 03 is a challan under the GST law. If you want to pay pre-deposit, you have every mechanism. वो RBI का एक temporary number, account number create होके आप वहाँ पे pre-deposit भर सकते हो. There was also a circular issued by CBIC to this effect that कोई भी अगर ऐसा issue हुआ है तो that will not be considered as a valid pre-deposit. Now, therefore, I don't know that in what context my taxpayer has done the payment in that 3B. I cannot really realize. So for that matter, you have to take another declaration from your client. That okay, give it under the oath that this is what is the actual tax that you have paid, and then it is your degree of reliance on him, and then you are going to issue that certificate with such a huge vulnerability to the certificate. तो डिपार्टमेंट ने कुछ नहीं किया, तो वो 2A 3B का जो ongoing cases इतना सारा बढ़ गया, they just try to shift some of the burden to us. That okay, ठीक है, आप बोल रहे हो ना इतना कि credit genuine है, आप बताओ credit genuine है बस. I am still very much clear. For 1st July 2017 to 31st December 2021, my policy is go and file an appeal. I am not going to go for that circular with, at all. Now, there's the last condition which is there, that is he has furnished the return under section 39 provided. So of course, filing of GST return. Now you have so many cases where people have filed their GST returns belatedly. And now there are notices which are issued that your entire input tax credit is disallowed. That is a very, very challenging scenario, let me tell you, because it is, so everything is there. Like, मतलब एक केस तो मैं आपको बताता हूँ, इतना genuine है. 2A में पूरा का पूरा क्रेडिट का अमाउंट दिख रहा है, 3-4 साल का, सब कुछ सही है, सिर्फ इन्होंने 3B लेट भरा है. अब जिसने लेट भरा है वो इंसान अनफॉर्चुनेटली एग्जिस्ट ही नहीं कर रहा है. So they don't know, there is no answer to why it was filed late. It is just it was filed late, that's it. Now what to do in such cases? अभी तो ये लोग रिकवरी भी निकाल रहे हैं. So whenever you're going to the officer, they are saying that yes sir, हम मानते हैं कि आपका credit genuine है, पर condition fulfillment आपने नहीं किया है, that you had to file the returns by the time limits. So first thing, you have not filed the returns only. When you have filed a belated return, it doesn't count like a normal return. So the due date has not been followed. So such cases में unfortunately the appeals, of course there is no recourse because इतना सारा लाख रुपए का credit है, वो आज हम लोग वापस तो भर नहीं सकते. So we are filing the appeals, but even we know that it is a very weak appeal in terms of legality. Now, there are a few decisions or judgments in the service tax regime, in the SENVAT regime, wherein the courts have appreciated the facts that there are genuine cases of tax payment, but it was failed to be shown in the returns, it was failed to be recorded in the books, and where they have said that larger interest में you need to see that tax भरा है तो आपको credit देना चाहिए. ये थोड़े बहुत ऐसे decisions है, judgments है, but that ratios are not obviously going to be applied as it is in the GST regime. Because the courts may also take a stand that if there is a legal requirement which makes it compulsory to file the returns and only then claim the credit, because it is coming under section 16 subsection 2, which starts with a non-obstant clause. Notwithstanding anything contained in this section, input tax rate shall not be allowed unless so and so conditions are followed. Usme ka ek condition is filing of returns. So there is a definite issue with respect to this transaction, but yeah, we need to fight them. Difficult to prove. Yes, sir. So, I think you meant to say two, one you have filed late. Yes. One you filed on time. 3B में आपने tax late भरा. Okay. Okay. Now see there again, what is happening is that 3B में late pay किया इसलिए the only thing that can happen is that okay, you have paid the tax along with interest. Then technically वहाँ पे किसी का disallow नहीं होगा because आपने one time पे अगर भरा था तो उसके 2B में जाके वो बैठ गया है transaction. If officer wants to say that okay, he's a defaulter, but then he has paid the tax also. 3B late, so that's why now they have brought in that provision also ना, अगर 1 and 3B में अगर consistently अपने एक से ज्यादा महीने का फाइल नहीं किया तो वो अगले महीने का आपको फाइल ही नहीं करने देगा either of the returns. Because earlier this was the very cunning methodology which was applied that people used to file only GSTR 1. तो customer boom नहीं मारता था कि भाई तेरे दिख नहीं रहा है 2A में. And बाकी 3B का पत्ता ही नहीं था. Then you started getting that chart, filed or not filed, 1, 3B. Then you used to see bigger companies, they could dominate, payment रोक दिया, ये किया, वो किया. But छोटे लोग, MSME, SME वाले लोग क्या करेंगे? वो बोलेंगे छोड़ यार, मैं credit ले लिया, मैंने तू बाद में देख, मैं भी बाद में देखता हूँ. Now you get so nice notices that supplier has filed his return after the due date under 16 subsection 4. अभी supplier का मेरे 16 subsection 4 से क्या लेना देना है? But they have a parameter saying that if the supplier has filed his GSTR 1 return late, which has exceeded the time limit permissible for me to claim the credit, even then they are disallowing that credit. Then I don't understand what is the point of issue giving so much of amnesty schemes for filing the returns. अभी last September 2021 में भी आप 17-18 के returns file कर रहे थे permissibly without late fees or with limited late fees. So then there is no correlation. You are giving amnesty on one hand and then you are saying that no credit नहीं मिलेगा because 16/4 के बाद अपने सामने वाले ने GSTR 1 file किया. So that these are practical issues which are all under this aspect of 2A 3B mismatch. Yes sir. हाँ. Correct. अभी वो लोग ऐसा कर रहे हैं suo motu cancellation में, they are giving a retrospective cancellation effect to that. RC cancelled also, whether recipient was aware of the fact that उसका registration cancel हुआ है या हुआ था या आपने retrospectively कर दिया जब वो बंदा था भी इधर. So I think just 3 days back only there is one of the judgment in a writ petition that has been given by a high court, I don't remember the name, wherein they have said that if the taxpayer is ready to pay the tax and resolve all the liabilities and all, then why are you not giving his registration back to him? उसने cancellation को कंडोन कैंसिलेशन को क्या बोलते हैं उसको रिवोकेशन करने में अगर लेट किया है तो यू आर सेइंग दैट यू विल नॉट गेट अ रजिस्ट्रेशन एंड इट इज बीइंग कैंसल्ड नाउ. बट इफ दैट फेलो इज रेडी टू पे द टैक्स, ही इज रेडी टू रेगुलाइज द थिंग्स, देन व्हाई इज द डिपार्टमेंट नॉट लेटिंग हिम डू दैट? करेक्ट. सो अभी क्या होता है, उसका कैंसिलेशन का ये इशू हो गया, इसलिए कस्टमर सफर कौन कर रहा है, तो कस्टमर सफर कर रहा है. अभी मुझे ये थोड़ी मालूम था कि सपोज आज, एंड ऐसा थोड़ी रूल है कि आप कभी बिजनेस बंद ही नहीं कर सकते. ऐसा तो आपका रजिस्ट्रेशन एवर लॉन्ग चलता रहेगा, सदियों तक चलता रहेगा, बिकॉज द रेसिपिएंट अदरवाइज विल लूज द क्रेडिट सिंस हिज रजिस्ट्रेशन हैज गॉट कैंसिल्ड. So this query, like this parameter, that input tax credit is disallowed in respect of all those supplies where the registration is cancelled by any reason for that matter. RC cancelled ऐसा लिख के देते हैं और बोलते हैं ये सब disallowed है. So whether it is your motive with date, with a retrospective effect, or in any other way, once the registration is cancelled, till that day, if the transaction was genuine, there is no doubt in that credit at all. This cannot be made a basis of disallowing a credit to somebody because that registration has been cancelled. So that is as good as you are fighting a 2A 3B mismatch on a scenario. Now, where the recipient fails to pay to the supplier, so the condition is that within 180 days from the date of invoice, the payment has to be made to the supplier. Otherwise, what is the repercussion? That your input tax credit on that particular transaction will be liable for reversal. It has to be added as an output tax liability. And also there is a proviso which says that subsequently you can reclaim the credit once the payment is made. Now, this is one of the proviso which hardly gets followed. Two things. One is that by मेरे and मेरे के supplier के बीच में agreement है, मेरे को 180 days में देना है, हमारा झगड़ा हुआ है, then उसने अभी मेरे को मनाया है, तो I am paying him today. It is our privity of contract. But on account वाले transaction में इतना तकलीफ नहीं आता, because आपका कुछ purchase आ रहा है, कुछ तो पैसा जा रहा है. It is not matched bill to bill, bill to bill. It is has to be understood FIFO. जो पेमेंट आया है वो पहले ट्रांजैक्शन के अगेंस्ट जो पेमेंट आपने किया है, दैट हैज टू बी अंडरस्टूड इन अ FIFO बेसिस. नाउ देयर आल्सो दे आर चैलेंजिंग, ये बिल का पैसा इसमें है, ये किस बेसिस पे आप बोल. तो आप उल्टा सवाल पूछो, ये बिल का पैसा इसमें नहीं है, ये आप किस बेसिस पे बोल सकते. ऐसे तो आप पूरा दिन भी बैठोगे तो भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ने वाला. नथिंग कम्स पॉजिटिव आउट ऑफ दैट. सो anyways, if you are not reversing the credit, they are disallowing that. But if you have made the payment eventually, credit is eligible. So there is no problem as such. You may make the payment at any time. मतलब एक साल में डिफॉल्ट किया, भले आप 4 साल के बाद सुधर गए और आपने पेमेंट कर दिया, तो भी आपको क्रेडिट वो साल में रीअवेल कर पाओगे, बिकॉज द टाइम लिमिट अंडर द लॉ इज फॉर अवेलमेंट ऑफ क्रेडिट. रीअवेलमेंट हैज नो डिफाइंड टाइम लिमिट अंडर द लॉ. सो 17-18 में कोई शायद आपने 180 डेज वाला अमाउंट रिवर्स किया रहेगा. आज अगर आपने आज 29 दिसंबर 2022 को आपने वो बंदे को पेमेंट किया, तो आज भी आप वो अमाउंट को रिक्लेम करने के लिए एलिजिबल हो. देयर इज नो लिमिटेशन फॉर रीअवेलमेंट ऑफ क्रेडिट इन सच केस. सो दैट इज अ प्रिंसिपल. लाइक अवेलमेंट, देयर इज अ टाइम लिमिट, बिकॉज अवेलमेंट इज ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंट. Reavailment is not based on any document. Reavailment is on the basis of an action of making payment to the supplier. Therefore, you are eligible to claim the credit today. There is no time limit under 16(4). Okay, so if the input tax credit is missed out to be claimed in the returns, can it be claimed as a, can it be called as a valid credit only if the same is mentioned in books of accounts. Now the thing is that आपने the points that we discussed, I'm skipping. Now, whether registered person has claimed depreciation on the tax component of capital goods, input tax credit will be allowed only on the amount which is net of the taxes, which is known. Now, see, it is simple. Under the Income Tax Act, Section 32, explanation to Section 32 very specifically says that the amount which is capitalized has to be net of taxes. GST में का भी provision बहुत clearly बोल रहा है 16 subsection 3 में that whatever claiming credit you are claiming on capital goods, the tax portion on that should not be considered for the purpose of depreciation. So let's say 5 लाख रुपए का asset है, 90,000 रुपए उसके ऊपर का अगर GST है, So if you have recorded the transaction as fixed asset account debit 5 lakhs, input GST account 90,000 to supplier account 590, then you are claiming a credit of 90,000, then claim depreciation only on 5 lakhs. Don't do both the things, like यहाँ पे depreciation भी 590 पे लेने का and वो दिखाने का नहीं, फिर यहाँ पे अपने 90,000 credit भी लेने का है. So ये double benefits मत उठाओ, इतना ही सिर्फ ये provision. Sir, I'll tell you, मतलब like you must be very much aware that पहले के इसमें मतलब like few years back there were 3 set of books of accounts available. नहीं मतलब मैं fraud का ही बोल रहा हूँ सर. नॉर्मल इंसान ऑर्डिनरी जूरिस्प्रूडेंस वाला ऐसा करने जाएगा नहीं, which is given, but then their intention is अभी उनका एक और रीडिंग होता है, मतलब ये प्रोविजन के ऊपर से भी मुझे ऑडिट क्वेरी मैंने फेस किया है. सो दिस सेम प्रोविजन वाज रेड फॉर मी. इट सेज दैट वेदर रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन हैज क्लेम डेप्रिसिएशन ऑन द टैक्स कंपोनेंट ऑफ कैपिटल गुड्स, द ऑफिसर हैड अ इंटरप्रिटेशन दैट इफ यू हैव कैपिटलाइज्ड समथिंग इन द बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट यू विल नॉट गेट द क्रेडिट ऑन इट. मतलब अगर आपने फिक्स्ड एसेट लिया है बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स में, वो फिक्स्ड एसेट के अंडर गया, वो चीज का आपको क्रेडिट ही नहीं मिलता. ये उनका रीडिंग था. तो उस दिन मैं और वो सुबह 11 बजे से लेकर शाम को 7 बजे तक ये चीज के ऊपर बहुत गहन चर्चा कर रहे थे, दैट हाउ आई एम रॉन्ग. मैं he had got all the entire force behind him, like how this fellow is fraudulent, ये वो, you're supporting frauds, ये वो सब बहुत कुछ सुना है. Now we had every reason to say that this is the simple understanding that don't claim the credit on the tax component. That means you're not supposed to take the depreciation calculation on the tax component. The issue was that this client's accountant was very excited to make submissions. तो उन्होंने एक दिन पहले जाके उनको एक शीट दिया था जिसमें उन्होंने फिक्स्ड एसेट का कैलकुलेशन करते हुए गलती से टैक्स अमाउंट ऐड करके फिक्स्ड एसेट का कैलकुलेशन दिया while giving the depreciation schedule. So according to their calculations, everything was capitalized including the tax amount. So they said, now we have a evidence that you have done so. पहला तो अकाउंटेंट को मैं बाद में देखा, बट मैंने बोला भाई क्या कर रहे हैं. Then we had to get the income tax audit report, 3CD, depreciation schedule. उसके CA से वो सर्टिफिकेट भी लाया कि भाई डेप्रिसिएशन ऐसा नहीं हुआ. तब जाके वो ऑफिसर राजी हो गए. अकाउंटेंट को मैंने पूछा कि अरे मित्रा असं का केलंस तुम्ही, व्हाई वर यू सो मच इन हेस्ट एंड व्हाई व्हाट वाज सो नाइस इन इंप्रेसिंग द ऑफिसर विथ योर डेप्रिसिएशन शेड्यूल. वो बोला नहीं, उन्होंने 3 बार मुझे फोन किया तो मेरे को डेप्रिसिएशन शेड्यूल देने का था तो मैंने दे दिया. मैंने बोला अगले बार 3 क्या 30 बार भी फोन आया तो भी इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट हटा के डेप्रिसिएशन शेड्यूल देना, बिकॉज दैट कॉस्टेड अस 7 hours ऑफ स्ट्रगल. उसके बाद 4 सर्टिफिकेट्स टू प्रूव दैट ऐसा नहीं हुआ, जस्ट बिकॉज वन सिंपल sheet he gave that did not even have a letterhead of the company, but still they had taken that as a evidence because they had taken it as a submission on record. So these are certain darker sides of it. Now the time limit to claim credit is known that it has extended up to 30th of November. वो भी 21-22 के लिए चले गया है. So it is not linked with any return anymore. So maybe अगर आपने जुलाई 22 का भी रिटर्न होल्ड करके अभी परसों 29 नवंबर को फाइल किया है, still your all credit for 21-22 in that is eligible. Earlier it was linked to the return for the month of September following the end of the financial year. So technically तभी अपन 20 अक्टूबर डेट पकड़ते थे क्रेडिट क्लेम करने का. Now it has been extended to a date, specifically 30th of November. It may be in any of the returns, because अभी ये झगड़ा आगे चालू होने वाला है. उन्हें बोलेंगे 30th नवंबर को आपने जुलाई 2022 का रिटर्न फाइल किया ही कैसे. I'll say मैंने इंटरेस्ट भरा, मैंने कर दिया, मेरी मर्जी. डेट रेलेवेंट है ना क्रेडिट क्लेम करने के लिए. मैंने 29 नवंबर को क्लेम किया है क्रेडिट बिकॉज मेरा 3B फाइलिंग उस दिन हुआ है जिसमें ये टैक्स क्रेडिट है. नाउ इफ यू हैव अ प्रॉब्लम चैलेंज दिस. सो 30th November इज द रेलेवेंट डेट. नाउ ऑन द क्रेडिट नोट एंड I'll only cover a specific points that there is a lot of issue going on about the credit notes which are issued for incentives by the companies. अभी मैं समझो मेडिकल डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर हूँ, डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर का पूरे लाइन को ऐसा क्रेडिट नोट्स के ऊपर से भरे भरे नोटिस आ ही रहे ऑलरेडी. एनी ऑफ द डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर एजेंसी इज गेटिंग इंसेंटिव्स फ्रॉम द कंपनी, फ्रॉम द मैन्युफैक्चरर और फ्रॉम द सुपर स्टॉकिस्ट और whomsoever it is. वो क्रेडिट नोट्स के बारे में बहुत बवाल चल. अभी सिंपल है, देखो इंसेंटिव आपको मिला था फॉर द ईयर 2021 एंड वो इंसेंटिव आपको मिला है दिसंबर 2021 में. For the financial year 2021, you got the incentive in December 2021. Now incentives में उन्होंने आपको 5 लाख का एक क्रेडिट नोट दे दिया. That okay, 5 lakh rupees gross reduction, gross discount के हिसाब से 5 लाख रुपए आपको incentives. They never showed it as a reduction from their output taxable value because they did not have any intention who the company. Likewise, you have not done any reduction in input tax credit. अभी आपने क्या किया, आपने प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट में उसको रिकॉर्ड कर दिया अंडर इनडायरेक्ट इनकम, अदर इनकम बोलते कि इंसेंटिव रिसीव्ड कर. डिपार्टमेंट आता है पहला वो इनडायरेक्ट वो डायरेक्ट इनकम छोड़ो, उनको इनडायरेक्ट इनकम में बहुत इंटरेस्ट है, पहला पकड़ते हैं इंसेंटिव रिसीव. इंसेंटिव कितना है, 5 लाख रुपए के ऊपर का आईटीसी रिवर्स करो. ये तो क्लियर है, बोलते क्लियर है, टैक्स लायबिलिटी है, रिवर्स. So now there is a fight that credit note means what? If it is a credit note issued in terms of section 34, which is to be only issued if there are certain conditions which are fulfilled. Now, when you can issue a credit note under section 34, that is defined. If there is a shortage of supply, if there is a rate change, or if there is any other price adjustment. Now, there are two views, I mean, rather there are 2 points that are to be considered. जो अपना value of supply का provisions है section 15 में, section 15 subsection 3 talks about discounts. There are 2 types of discount. Discount which is given at the time of supply and the discount which is given after the supply. Discount which is given after the supply के लिए condition है that if the discount was pre-agreed, then the discount given after the supply is a eligible reduction in taxable value. And therefore, what is the mechanism of doing that subsequent to supply वाला discount? तो आप credit note issue कर सकते हो. जितना credit note issue करे उसके corresponding tax amount you can reduce from your output tax liability with respect to that transaction. So the normal scenario is that the supplier is issuing a credit note, the recipient has to reverse the input tax credit to that effect, which is not a problem. Now the incentives वाले case में credit notes आए हैं, but that supplier has never reported in the GST return because he never had an intention of reducing his taxable transactional values and he did not want to reduce his output tax also. So जो incentive आपको आया है, whether you should reverse the input tax credit there or not, my answer is clearly no, don't do anything. There is no need. Department's case is also correct. They उनका मानना है कि भाई आप फिर वैल्यू सिर्फ यहाँ पे इन्फ्लेट करके बाद में क्रेडिट नोट्स मार दोगे तो क्रेडिट ज्यादा पास ऑन हो रहा है. मींस यू आर शोइंग इनिशियली यू सेड दैट मैंने 10 लाख का सेल किया, सामने वाले ने 10 लाख का परचेस किया, तो ही क्लेम्ड आईटीसी ऑन 10 lakhs. नाउ यू आर गिविंग हिम अ क्रेडिट नोट ऑफ 2 lakh rupees, देन एक्चुअली स्पीकिंग आपने 8 लाख का ही सेल किया है, देयरफॉर उसको क्रेडिट भी 8 लाख के हिसाब से मिलना चाहिए. ये उनका आर्ग्यूमेंट. 100% litigative. But if you are very much sure about the credit note, please don't accept any reversal in input tax credit. You have to go and litigate this aspect. Okay. Now, as far as block credits are concerned, there are only a couple of points that I would like to take up. Okay. Now, the first thing is that so I'll just take a general call now. See, we are, what time it is now? Exactly 8 o'clock, right? Can you give me 10 minutes only? Consensus. Thank you so much. So, input tax credit may block and apportionment and block credits. That is what section 17 has been titled as. Now, when you talk about section 17 subsection 1 to 17 subsection 4, it is all about apportionment, distribution of credits. And blocked credits is only in 17 subsection 5. Now, apportionment का जरूरत कब पड़ता है? If there is a scenario, let's say, if there is a scenario that there is a transaction of, if there is a scenario that in my business, there is certain portion of my business which is having an outward taxable supply and there is certain portion which is having an outward exempted supply. So I'll give you a simple example. Let's say that I'm manufacturing shoes. And मेरे shoes वाले product में gumboots is one of the product which is exempted, let's suppose. तो मेरे फैक्ट्री में जो लेदर खरीदा जाता है उससे मेरा नॉर्मल शूज भी मैन्युफैक्चर हो रहा है, गमबूट्स भी मैन्युफैक्चर हो रहा है. 17 subsection 2 tells me input tax credit shall be restricted to so much of the goods or services which are used in taxable outward supplies, including the zero rated supplies, मतलब export and SEZ वाला. So in my business, whatever gets consumed for taxable outward supply, credit is allowed. In my business, whatever gets consumed for exported transactions, SEZ supplies, credit is allowed. But whatever gets consumed for exempted or nil rated goods, my input tax credit is not allowed. in detail, if you see, then the explanation is given in 17 subsection 3 and the rules there to ki what do you mean by exempted supplies. So normally तो जो exempted है, जो nil rated है, वो तो exempt supply आता ही है. There is also a rule which specifically mentioned that, okay, 1% of the value of the transaction in securities that has been done by you should be considered as a deemed value of exempted supply, so on and so forth. Rule 42, Rule 43 रिवर्सल के ऊपर कई बार आपको जीएसटी ऑफिस से नोटिस आता है या फिर वो आपको ऑडिट में क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं दैट कॉमन क्रेडिट रिवर्सल क्यों नहीं किया. The very simple question, I mean, the simple answer over here is, see, if you can see the wordings of the provision section 17 subsection 2, क्या लिखा है? Where goods or services or both are used by a registered person partly for effecting taxable supplies and partly for effecting exempted supplies. Precisely, only those goods or services which are partly used for both the types of supply only should be considered for this common credit reversal calculation. उसका जो फॉर्मूला दिया है रूल 42 में वो भी ऐसे ही बोलता है दैट ओके इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट का मेरा ये पूरा बकेट है, उसमें से इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट विच इज मेंट एक्सक्लूसिवली फॉर मेकिंग टैक्सेबल सप्लाईज इज 100% अलाउड. देयर इज नो नीड ऑफ एनी रिवर्सल टू दैट. Input tax credit which is used exclusively for making exempted supplies, input tax credit is not allowed. जो बचता है bucket में, that is my common input tax credit which is meant for my taxable supplies as well as exempted supplies. Now just to add some flavor, उन्होंने उसमें क्या लिखा है, taxable supplies and zero rated supplies के लिए अगर है तो ITC is allowed. So if you have something for your taxable output sales where you are making output supply which is liable for GST, you have something as exports, you have something as SEZ transaction, इन सब के ऊपर लगने वाला ट्रांजैक्शंस के ऊपर जो कॉमन क्रेडिट का पोर्शन है उसका आपको इनपुट टैक्स रेट एलिजिबल है. सो लेट्स से कॉमन क्रेडिट में आपके पास 100 रुपए है, योर आउटपुट टर्नओवर इज ऑफ 500 आउट ऑफ विच 200 इज टैक्सेबल, 200 इज एग्जम्प्टेड एंड 100 इज एक्सपोर्ट. तो योर एलिजिबल कॉमन क्रेडिट विल बी 300 रुपीज के ऊपर कंसिडर किया जाएगा. 300 डिवाइडेड बाय 500 इज योर एलिजिबल कॉमन क्रेडिट. 200 डिवाइडेड बाय 500 विल बी योर ineligible common credit. Unfortunately, a academic example बहुत easy है and practical case बहुत difficult है. अब challenge क्या है कि how you prove something is a common credit or not. That is a matter of challenge. So I'll just give you a very practical case. There was a summons case with respect to one of the freight forwarders client I have. They're based out in Vizag. Now, this freight forwarding agents, you know that they keep on receiving services or rather they keep on giving services to their customers and उनके लिए बहुत सारा पैसा लेते और देते भी है. Means they'll show it as a sale and they'll show it as a purchase. मतलब वो उसमें उनका कोई involvement नहीं रहता. They are purely called as pure agents in such. Now, some of them they do very sensible thing that balance sheet item में दिखाते हैं कि जितना पैसा आया वो balance sheet item में asset है, जितना दे दिया वो liability है, वो knock off करके रेवेन्यू सिर्फ उतना ही दिखाते हैं जितना वो कमीशन कमाता है. बट सम ऑफ देम आर शोइंग एवरीथिंग एज सेल्स, एवरीथिंग एज परचेज. वो लोग अटक जाते. नाउ इन माय केस द सेम थिंग हैज हैपेंड दैट द ऑफिसर्स डिमांडेड दैट बॉस कॉमन क्रेडिट रिवर्सल में इफ यू आर सेइंग दैट सो एंड सो रुपीज आउट ऑफ लेट्स, अभी उनका कैसा है कुछ 60-70 करोड़ का टर्नओवर है, उसमें से ओनली 10 करोड़ इज टैक्सेबल एंड 60 करोड़ इज एग्जम्प्टेड बिकॉज दे शोड दैट amount spent for, I mean the amount which was collected for that pure agent transaction उन्होंने उसको exempt supply करके report किया returns में. Now in that case, since that amount is eligible as a pure agent value, it is not a supply only to the extent of that 50 crore rupees. When something is not a supply, it cannot be deemed to be an exempted supply. It doesn't have any value per se. It is considered as I mean, it is not a supply only for that matter. उसका गलती इतना हुआ कि उसने उसको exempted supply दिखाया था, इसलिए ऑफिसर बोलता है कि जो भी क्रेडिट है ITC है उसको अपोर्शन करो आप in the ratio of 10:6. मैंने बोला भाई फिर मैं धंधा क्यों करूं? मुझे अगर बिजनेस में मिलने वाला इनपुट टैक्स, अभी मैं जिन चीजों का इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट तो सामने सामने पसंद करो वो तो आप छोड़ ही दो. Wherever I am not having any relevance with the transaction, how can you treat that turnover to be an exempted supply for me? And then for that matter, you will try to reduce it by way of this common credit reversal. So इसीलिए क्या हुआ कि according to the DGJ, like this case has come in from the Department of GST Revenue Intelligence. They saw that by potentially इधर तो chances है कि 90% of the credit is ineligible only because it is used for exempted supply. That was their apprehension, which is not wrong. But it took a lot of efforts, and right now also I'm not sure कि वो लोग मानने वाले बात. समन्स में आए, स्टेटमेंट लिख के लिया है, शो कॉज नोटिस अभी तक इशू नहीं हुआ है, बट आने वाला. जब भी आएगा हम लोग को तो यही डिफेंड करना है that this is not an exempted supply. Yes, it has been reported as an exempted supply because of the nature of industry which has been operating in this manner only. I think there is some circular in income tax also on how to report this transactions. However, I'm not very sure of how much, I mean, what that exact circular was. So the initial section, now the 17 subsection 1 says that input tax credit should be eligible only in respect of those goods or services which are used for the business, means something which is used other than business, uska credit nahi milega, which is fair. But now, what do you mean by input? I mean, goods or services which are used for the purpose other than business. Now, somebody will say that, okay, corporate social responsibility के लिए कोई चीज use किया था, so उसका credit नहीं मिलना चाहिए. Let's say that I manufacture of school bags. Normally मैं वो बेचता हूँ, but मैंने as a CSR activity कुछ bags बांट दिया, मतलब बच्चों में distribute कर दिया. Now, you know, on a very practical way, recently only Senvat credit rules का एक judgment आया जहाँ पे CSR activity has been considered as eligible for claiming credits. And वो तो ratio ऐसा apply हो जाएगा इधर तो ये तो 17(1) का कोई validity नहीं दे देगा. But let's say in a very common case of a proprietor. Okay, proprietor has a toy shop. He has relatives coming to his shop. वो उनका बच्चा बोलता है अंकल मेरे को एक टॉय दे दो, उसमें से एक निकाल के डोरेमोन उसको थमा देते. So he had purchased 100 units. उसमें से एक उसने वो बच्चे को दे दिया. Now that is, it is used for the purpose other than business. So anyways, whatever goes as samples, gifts, that is a block credit, no doubt. But CSR activity को gift मान सकते हैं क्या? Samples मान सकते हैं क्या? तो नहीं. So there is no direct disallowance. So there are certain judgments of this nature which are going to be very pivotal when you have to defend such kind of a cases. Okay, now as far as 17.5 is concerned, yes, I know that I'm not going to now make you rush with that section. But as far as the block credits are concerned, just let's, yes, sir. Yes. Yeah. Common credit because of the restaurant number wherein you are having the restaurant take up and because it is located in some quantity that so in that case only common credit now there is a argument. Secondary transaction but we are taking conservative. So the oil and petrol pump are the common credit is either letting it go or they are technically if you want to ask but because those amounts are generally used, we are not using. But yes, that is a conservative stand I'm taking. Legally and technically, if you go to fight on, it is a valid credit. You need not reverse it on the basis of common credits. Yeah. Reverse. Yeah, so now that is like a double-edged sword. What is going on? The lease premium के ऊपर ये लोग GST मांग रहे हैं, which is a lease land taken from MIDC or any boards, you know. And then they are denying the credit, saying that, okay, it is a immobile property, technically on a 99 years lease. So you should not be entitled for any input tax credit because it is for an immobile property. Now there is a issue with this going on because recoveries have already started on this lease premium payments and GSTs on that. However, Safari Retreats करके एक judgment फिलहाल जो immobile property के around घूम रहा है, which is about the judgment which has gone favorable service tax, I mean, era का है, wherein that company is engaged in the business of renting of mall spaces. तो उन्होंने claim किया कि input tax credit हमारा जो है that is exactly for outward taxable supply, so हमको इसके immobile property के लिए लगने वाला हर चीज का credit मिलना चाहिए. That judgment is again, I mean, that matter is again listed in the Supreme Court on 23rd of January. I am only giving you a reference of Safari Retreats. Like if that is understood in that particular context, then there will be a floodgates for this immobile property. Kisko bolna hai? Because then you will say that boss, lease premium I am paying because I want to run this business. I am not interested in this land 99 years ke baad chahe main wo chhod bhi दूं. I don't want this land any further. I don't want to renew the lease. If that is what your argument is, maybe then if this floodgate open, you can go and argue that matter, but highly litigative, no doubt about that. But yes, there is a problem. Firstly, आज तक किसी ने tax ही नहीं भरा. Now they are saying that it is a service provided by the government or the local authorities, and because of that reason, it is coming under the 9 subsection 3 में आपको reverse charge में इसको service tax, I mean GST इसमें भरना पड़ेगा. Like just if Safari Retreats comes on a positive note from the taxpayer's perspective, which I doubt, because then ये floodgate हो जाएगा कि immobile property किसको बोलना है will become a very big question then. It absolutely. So that is a very thing why I said that whether you are going to call it as an immobile property or not. Now see, one of the problem is like, see one provision in section 17(5), I'll specifically refer it because we are reaching this point. It says that input tax credit का ये जो explanation उन्होंने दिया है immobile properties का. The expression plant and machinery means apparatus, equipment, machinery fixed to the earth by foundation or structural support that are used for making outward taxable supplies, excluding land, building, civil structure, telecommunication towers and pipelines laid outside the factory premises. Now, this is the pure explanation given for what you call as, I mean, what is disallowed from claiming the credit. Now, there is only one point where it says that if that goods or services which are relating to the immobile property to the extent capitalized, there the word uses to the extent capitalized. Now, in one of the cases, what happened that either apna Zoo aviation के base पे there are hangars for this charter flights and all this. वो 2017 में आपको अगर याद है तो बहुत सारा मतलब there was a huge flooding on that surface. 2017 में ही ऐसा हुआ था. Now they have to replace this hangar का जो surface होता है ना उनको बहुत soft रखना पड़ता है. So every 2 years almost 2-2.5 करोड़ का खर्चा करके उनको वो hangar का जगह upkeep करना पड़ता है. They don't capitalize those expenses. अब technically speaking वो floor है. वो फ्लोर को अपकीप कर रहा है 2-2.5 करोड़ रुपए वो स्पेंड करते हैं उसके ऊपर का जीएसटी जा रहा था. We have claimed that credit because of this particular point in the law where it says that input tax credit in respect of these goods or services to the extent it is capitalized is disallowed. That means what is not capitalized should be allowed. So ये capitalized word को भी कैसे use किया जा सकता है is again a point where you can play around the provision of the law. Of course, it is this lease thing currently, sir, I'll also tell you that we are only paying right now, but since we are paying it under reverse charge, we are just holding it by taking a credit and reversing it for the way. So if a later stage it gets allowable, we will just reclaim the credit. Okay. Now, as far as the availability of credit under special circumstances is concerned, we'll just cover a few practical issues, like a couple of them only. So generally what happens in case of a merger, demerger, amalgamation, the amalgamating company input tax credit has to be passed on to the amalgamated company. Now this transfer of credit is permissible under the law if there is a genuine case of amalgamation, there is an order of your NCLT or there is an order which is given where there is a specific provision of transfer of liabilities already there as a part of it. So all the assets and liabilities of amalgamating company become the assets and liability of amalgamated company. Abhi assets and liabilities mein input tax credit is a part of your asset. So there you are entitled to transfer the credit and the recipient entity will claim the credit, there is a mechanism ITC 02 नाम का एक फॉर्म है, वो फाइल करके आप credit transfer कर सकते. So as far as special circumstances is concerned, कहाँ पे main point आता है कि if you are changing your nature of business from composition levy to regular to composition levy, there the special circumstances play a very vital role. Because let's say that today I am changing my nature of business registration from regular to composition. तो जितना भी input tax credit का मेरे पास balance पड़ा हुआ, I'll have to write it off. If I'm coming from composition to regular, from today onwards, I will be entitled for claiming the credit. So as far as stocks is concerned, this can be done. Now, when it comes to the fixed asset में भी treatment differential है थोड़ा. That पहले मैंने fixed asset खरीद के पहले 2 साल मैंने तब use किया when I was a composition under composition levy. So today, if I have to claim the credit on that fixed asset, then I will get it after a discounting of the first 2 years of usage. Balance credit I'll be able to enjoy. On the other side, first 2 years I've claimed the input tax credit and I'm selling that asset. I am going into the composition levy. तो first 2 years के usage के proportion में मुझे credit retain रहेगा, balance मुझे सिर्फ write off करना. So, I mean, there are certain points of this nature which becomes very critical when it comes to this availability under special circumstance. So, yeah, I see that a lot of you are already, about to leave, and it is time enough that we have crossed a lot of time. So, basis any questions if are there, only one last point is for all input tax credit legal issues when it comes to fake invoices. This is the problematic scenario. So, tax is payable, interest is payable at 18%. And penalty is also leviable under section 122 because if the goods are actually not sold or services are actually not provided, but only the invoice is given, that is a penal offense. On the other side, if I am the recipient, I am taking the invoice, I am not getting the goods, I am not getting the service, even that is a penal offense. तो अगर ऐसे में वो लैपटॉप वाले जैसा कोई किसी को मिला तो चांदी है डिपार्टमेंट का डबल रिकवरी. There is a circular also in this regard that there are certain people who got trapped in this fake invoice circle. उनका कुछ लेना ना देना, वो सिर्फ अपना GST number दे बैठे उसके लिए and they have got trapped. I'll really tell you, it was a very pitiable scenario in one of the case. One fellow came to me. उनको किसी ने तो ऐसा आइडिया दिया कि आप MSME में जाओगे, आपका टर्नओवर बढ़ाओ. तो उन्होंने टर्नओवर बढ़ाने के लिए ऐसे इनवॉइस लिया, इनवॉइस दे दी. कुछ नहीं किया. Unfortunately, that fellow didn't even earn a rupee out of that. But it all came to be a fake scenario. कोई था ही नहीं, कुछ पर्पस ही नहीं था वो ट्रांजैक्शन. अब इसके मत्थे पर रॉन्ग क्लेम ऑफ ITC के लिए 122 फोड़ा है, रॉन्ग पासिंग ऑफ क्रेडिट के लिए भी इसको 122 का फोड़ा है. मतलब ये तो डबल टैक्स, डबल पेनल्टी, डबल इंटरेस्ट. बिकॉज जितना ITC लिया है वो तो सब रिवर्स करो, उतना इंटरेस्ट भरो, उतना पेनल्टी भरो. अच्छा, रॉन्ग क्रेडिट पास ऑन किया है, उसके ऊपर का भी टैक्स भरो, उसका भी इंटरेस्ट भरो, उसका भी पेनल्टी भरो. This fellow doesn't even have assets more than 1 crore of rupees. Now he has a liability already of 8 crores of rupees and counting. So this is also a darker side. Unfortunately, some people have got trapped in that. All right. So from my end, this is what I had to contribute. Yeah, I had some things to discuss, but yes, there was a time constraint today. Maybe sometime later we can catch up. So for any queries, I'll be just available here for some more time. Till that time, I'll hand over it to Bhushan. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much for this insightful session. I will request everybody to have a round of applause. Thank you, Aumkar sir, for sharing your insights, practical experiences. And it was, I think so, the session was wonderful because I see each and every participant to be seated till so much late. So thank you so much. And I on behalf of WRC, present a hearty vote of thanks to Aumkar Gadgil sir for this insightful session. Request every participant to have a round of applause for the sir, please. Now we shall leave and we'll disperse. And if anyone has a query, sir is available for 10 minutes. You can come out and have a discussion.